The council is not in session in our regular scheduled meeting that will take place at approximately 7 o'clock this evening. And this is an informational session with the city's planning department regarding the rail trail proposal for the city of Leominster. My name is Rick Marshey, I'm the council president and Ward 5 city councilor. And we do have several members that are here on the council, some that will be joining us as they get out of work and get home, and some that are not here this evening on vacation. The format for tonight is going to be as follows. We're going to have the presentation by the City of Leominster, the group that has been working on this. When they finish, the council will have a chance to ask questions only, not comment, not particular opinions, but questions. And then I'm going to do something a little different. In the past, usually the informational meetings are closed to the public. I'm opening it up. So I think it's pretty significant. A lot of people came down tonight so they could ask questions for clarification. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to answer all the questions. You're going to be hearing this for the first time. We're hearing it for the first time as well as city councilors, outside of some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes, especially in Ward 5. So in the meantime, again, we're going to have the presentation. I'm going to ask you to just run right through that, Nikki.
Absolutely.
And then when you're done with that, councils will ask questions, and I'll open up to the public, okay?
Absolutely.
So if you want to kill one of the lights over there, it might be a little easier for people to see, and I'll move. Yeah. Hey, John. Is that chair away? It's all yours.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Nikki Peters, the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Leominster. Mayor Mazzarella is in traffic, but will be arriving as soon as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation so that we don't hold anyone up. I am not great with this little clicker, so bear with me. So thank you for taking the time for this public info session regarding the Twin Cities Rail Trail. We are here this evening to discuss the appropriation of $83,100 to the Highway Capital Outlay Expense Account for compensation to property owners for 24 temporary easements and 6 permanent easements. There are 7 permanent easements, however, one has already been donated. The vote on the easements themselves will take place on August 26th. However, the appropriation request is to make sure the funds are ready in time to meet the Federal Highway Administration and Mass DOT timeline. We are also here tonight to clear up any confusion regarding these easements and answer any questions you may have about the encroachments. In 2017, the city voted to acquire the CSX right-of-way using federal funding. At that time, the City Council voted to approve this acquisition. At the time of the purchase, all encroachments on the right-of-way needed to be removed, and encroaching property owners were notified. We will discuss this in more detail during our presentation. We want to point out that no property ownership will be transferred to the city for this project. We will clarify some confusion that may exist about this project and look forward to answering your questions in more depth. We have representatives from KP Law, Mass DOT, Stantec, and Brown Richardson and Rowe available to answer your questions. And for the sake of you all understanding who's here this evening, I thought we could go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves and explain where they're from.
John Roseberry, Leominster DPW.
Hi, I'm Sharon Everett from KB Law.
Oh, it's not on. You gotta push the button.
Hello, I'm Sharon Everett from KP Law.
Lee Smith from KP Law.
John Hayden from Stantec Consulting Services.
Ann Sullivan from MassDOT District 3.
Arthur Frost, MassDOT District 3.
Linda Walsh, MassDOT right away.
Pam Marquis, Mass DOT right of way.
Clarissa Rowe, Brown Richardson and Rowe, working for the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Marlon Newell, Stantec.
Okay. So we have all the crew with us tonight. Happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm going to transition this over to Sharon Everett from KP Law. We've had some questions about, what is an easement, what is an encroachment, and we thought it would be important to kind of go over those definitions and have you guys understand exactly what's happening here and how it impacts these properties and the property owners.
So before we go into a discussion about the project, I just want to lay out some terms that we will use. And these are terms of art, so I think it's important for us to know what the meaning is. So you're going to hear a lot about easements, and the city is looking for easements. What is an easement? An easement is the right to go onto somebody's property, your property, for a specific purpose. And here we're looking for easements, so there are some permanent easements, such as utility easements that will stay on your property forever. There are also temporary easements that gives us the right to go onto your property for a certain period of time to do certain things, certain work, and we'll discuss what those entail later. But again, these are rights to go onto your property either permanently or for a short period of time. The temporary easements that we are looking for in this project is 5 years, and that's just enough time for us to do the project in case there are any delays. But we expect that once the project has been completed, we won't need to enter your property unless those are permanent easements. The one thing I want to emphasize is that we are not taking property, we're not acquiring ownership of your property. Well, as I said, the easement is just simply the right to go onto your property to do some work. But otherwise, and the permanent easements will allow members of the public and others to come and travel onto your property, again, for recreation purposes. But you continue to own the property, it's yours. And you can use it for whatever purposes that you want, so long as we have the right to do the work and it doesn't interfere unreasonably with the rights that the city wants to acquire.
So we thought it would be helpful to actually show visually what these easements look like and how, obviously, it relates to this project. So we thought that John from Stantec would be helpful in explaining what is what on this slide. Let me see if my little pointer works here.
Oh, I've got one.
Oh, you have one. Oh, look at you. All right.
As you can see on this plan, the red line here and the red line here outline the property, the CSX rail alignment that the city is acquiring for the purposes of building the trail. In this particular location, adjacent to Priest Street, we're going to be grading out in this area right to the property line. So in this instance, we're acquiring a 5-foot wide temporary easement. That's what that yellow portion right there is. That temporary easement allows the contractor working for to construct the rail trail to enter into that 5-foot strip, stand there, and construct the grading. So basically, he's standing there to rake out the earthwork and to spread seed in this instance. As soon as the work is done and the whole rail trail is complete, as was indicated, the temporary easement would expire and all rights would return to the property owner. In no instance is the city acquiring the property. They're acquiring rights on the property.
And also, I just want to clarify, I know you mentioned that we were acquiring the land, but we actually already have acquired the land
okay.
as far as that
The
goes.
CSX
Yes,
layout.
correct. We
Okay.
already do own the right-of-way
All right.
for this entire parcel. So, okay, next one. So here's an example of a permanent and a temporary easement. This is actually the photo that's up here is 6 North Main Street.
Yeah.
And we did go, this property is for sale, so we went and met with the buyer to explain this, because obviously they received the paperwork and had some questions. So, John, if you want to explain how this...
Well, again, the red line indicates the city's layout line for the street. So everything, this side and this side of the red line, the city already owns. It's a public right-of-way for the purpose of the street and the sidewalk. But in this instance, the back of the sidewalk is actually on private property. So this blue area here is approximately 1 foot wide by the width of the property, permanent easement that the city is acquiring rights to construct, maintain and construct the sidewalk. The sidewalk is there already, but since we need to reconstruct it as part of the project, the city needs to acquire the rights to access the property to reconstruct the sidewalk. And again, similar to the last slide, this yellow area is approximately 5 foot wide strip of land, which is being temporarily used as an easement to allow the contractor the ability to access the back of the sidewalk and construct the sidewalk. As Nikki indicated, we had met with the prospective buyer, and one of his concerns was there's actually a granite step right there. And he was asking, well, what's going to happen at the granite step? And the answer was absolutely nothing. The sidewalk is going to be reconstructed back to where it is today, plus or minus a fraction of an inch vertically. So the granite step won't even be touched by the construction.
And John, I think you mentioned at the meeting that it was happening, even though the rail trail is across the road, it was happening because the handicapped access ramps had to be brought up to code or something, so.
Right.
Okay.
As part of the rail project, the rail trail project, we're upgrading the ramps to carry the wheelchair ramps, the handicap accessible ramps, to carry the trail across North Main Street. What happens is, by state law, if we touch a ramp within an intersection, we have to reconstruct all of the ramps within the intersection and bring them all up to code. So that's the reason why we're coming over here and rebuilding this portion of the sidewalk, is we need to rebuild this ramp, this one, and that one.
And just to confirm, when they're temporary easements, it means that the workers are going to step into that land. They're not going to take that land. So they're basically stepping into that easement area to construct work on our property, effectively the city-owned property.
Correct.
Okay.
But in certain instances, not in this case, in certain instances, we may be doing a slight bit of grading in
Okay.
that area
Yeah.
as well. So there may be some land disturbance, but it will be put back the way it was.
That's what I wanted to make sure that people understood, that we were going to put it back.
We'll put it
Okay.
back the way it was.
Perfect. Okay. So for the next slide, we have some more terms and definitions, and I'll default back to Sharon to explain these. Okay, Lee.
All right, so these are some terms that you'll hear used and are relevant to the discussion. I'll just go through quickly. A trespass is the use of property owned by others without the owner's permission, and it's an unlawful use. So for example, you may have heard the term encroachment in this context, and that would be a placement of a structure or an obstruction on property owned by others without permission of the owner. So it's also a trespass on the property. So with the rail trail, unless an abutter has an existing agreement with either CSX, the railroad, before the city purchased the property, or with the city itself, any encroachments on that right-of-way must be removed. And this is a specific requirement under federal law to be able to use the federal funds to purchase the property. Notification to encroaching property owners went out in 2007, notifying them of the requirement for removal. I'm sorry, 2017.
And we do have a copy, if the counselors would like a copy of that letter. I brought a sample to show what went out to the property owners at that time.
So the next term is a license agreement or a right of entry, and that's a temporary legal right to use property owned by others for a limited purpose for a limited time. Under the law, a license can be terminated by either party. This term is relevant here because there are some owners who, my understanding is, have requested a privacy fence on their property along where the rail trail will go. The city cannot go onto a private owner's property to construct those privacy fences without this license or right of entry executed and delivered back to the city. We expect, because it's just a simple fence construction, that license period could be a very short period of time, so there may only be workers on the property for a few days, perhaps longer, but the term of the license would be long enough to allow the work to
And
proceed.
to clarify, it's actually, the initial discussion started about privacy fences, and we did have a meeting, a walkthrough, and it was determined that we could do a 6-foot black vinyl chain link fence, as there were some concerns about maintaining true privacy fences. In order to do that, we do need right of entry forms that have been mailed out. We would need 14 of them, and we've received 3 back so far, so that's why that was brought up this evening, to give you some context as to where we're at with that. So now the next slide talks about how we actually acquire these easements. And this slide is probably the most important part of this presentation tonight. As the terminology, I think, can be a little bit, can feel harsh, it can feel confusing. Obviously, when a city uses the term eminent domain, it brings about a lot of questions. So Sharon and Lee can certainly address how we're going about acquiring these easements.
Right, so as you know, the city needs to acquire some easements on your property. Now, how does the city acquire easements on your property? It can do it in one of 2 ways. One is called a grant of easement, which is we come to you, we ask you to sign a piece of paper, which discusses what the city is going to do on your property. Then we have you go to a notary public, have them sign the easement. Then we get it back, and then we record it for $75 each. The other way of acquiring an easement is to do a taking. A taking means just a way of acquiring the easement on your property, but instead of your signing a document giving us the easement, and our spending $75 recording it and sending you to the notary to find your signatures, this is a document that the city signs. It's called an order of taking. It simply lists whatever would be in the easement anyway, were you to sign one, which says, this is the easement, this is your property, this is the portion of the property on which the easement is going to stay. This is what we're going to do with the property. These are our rights, these are your rights. And once we record that, and it only requires $75 for the city to record this order of taking rather than $75 per property owner, so it's cost savings to the city. The city will acquire the same rights by that eminent domain, which is called a taking, as it would were you to give us the same easement. So it's a more efficient way of getting the rights all at once. It's a simple document, it's efficient. We put it on record, and then the city has the rights to go onto your property for those limited purposes. Now, again, I want to emphasize that when people hear about a taking or eminent domain, people think that we are actually going to take your property from you. The city does not intend to acquire any ownership rights. What it is acquiring, again, is simply the right to go to your property for some limited purposes. There are only 7 permanent easements, so the 7 property owners will be subject to that easement forever. For those property owners that are giving the town, or the city is taking by eminent domain the temporary easements, they will simply go away once the work is done. Or if the work isn't done and 5 years go by, then they will automatically terminate.
John, do you want to talk to the payments? Compensation.
Well, we have had each and every easement gets appraised, and we send it out to a state-approved licensed appraiser. Each one also has a review appraisal. So they check each other's work, and we come up with a compensation, and each owner has been notified by certified mail with a letter, a request for donation again, just in case, and the just compensation report, which states the amount that they would be receiving. And they won't receive it until after the vote is taken. So, and that also ties back into what Nikki first said with the appropriation that's on the agenda, which won't get decided tonight, but that number is just a piece of what the compensation is at the moment, because we had already appropriated another amount.
And that through Chapter 90, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
we paid through Chapter 90.
So if I may jump in, just
Sure.
as what John said, the property owners from whom the city is acquiring easements were were told that an appraiser was going to go onto your property. You were told that you could go with the appraiser to see what they're inspecting. And you had the opportunity, that's what we sent out, the city sent out an offer letter, which is letting you know what your compensation is. This is what the appraiser and the review appraiser determined to be the fair market value of your easement. So by now, you should know what the appraisal said, and that this is informing you of the amount of damages that the city will pay. Of course, that'll be done at a later time, once the city council has authorized the taking, and the city has recorded an order of taking, which is the document I just mentioned.
There has been some question about people's notification of this process. We've had some questions where people have said they've only heard about this recently in the last month or two. So we really just wanted to be very upfront in addressing that and giving you everyone a list of all the times that the public has been notified about the trail, as well as outreach letters. John can speak to the number of letters that have been sent out from the city as well. So if you want to just kind of highlight some of this.
Well, initially, we sent out, the first encroachment letters went out 2 years ago. And
I can
at-
pass these around if you'd like. Am I allowed to? Okay. I didn't want to just.
it was, at that point, people were put on notice that something they were doing or occupying the land. Since that time, not everyone else, in the 2 years, not everyone has gotten a second encroachment letter, because we were able to get from DOT that buildings with the foundation can be granted a license to remain on the property, so long as it's not encroaching too much and being over and going to affect the
trail.
affect the trail. About the same time the second encroachment letter went out was the outreach letter, which presented the project. We asked for donations of the easements. Everyone got a little exhibit of a map showing their property in the easement. And then the written offers were, like I just said, showing the appraisals with the just compensations and, again, within the request for donation and such. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's actually where we stopped our formal presentation, because we feel like that gives you a history as to how we got to where we are. Obviously wanted to sort of reiterate that we already own the land. We're already moving forward with this project from back in 2017 when the city acquired it. So now it's effectively compensating people for these easements that we're taking, and the word taking being a little bit of a harsh word, but as Sharon explained, not the implied.
We're not taking your property, just
Correct. Yeah.
acquiring the right to go onto your property for some purpose.
So if the counselors have any questions.
Okay, if you could shut that off and
Of
remove it,
course.
we'll put the light back on and go right into the meeting. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open up to the members of the city council at this point. Council Frida, go ahead. We're going to go right around.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we have ownership of the rail, or do we purchase it conditionally upon getting all the easements?
The city acquired ownership of the rail trail corridor by a deed back in August of 2017. So it's my understanding, maybe MassDOT wants to weigh in, but the use of the federal funds to acquire it also requires that there not be encroachments unless there's already a written agreement in place.
Okay, so we've already paid for it, we own them.
Correct.
That's correct.
Is there, I've been asked if the rail felt that it was necessary to take it back, that that was a possibility. Is that true or no?
The document that enabled the city to acquire it, it's a federal notice of interim trail use. So that there's a reservation under federal law that in the unlikely event that that area needed to be used again for rail purposes, that would be a possibility.
So they do have the right to take it back if they feel it's necessary.
I mean, that's correct. They have the theoretical right to come back and reactivate the railroad. But we've seen rail trails all over the country, and I'm not sure I can point to any or few instances where that right has been activated. I expect that that right won't be used, but the federal government likes to reserve those railroad rights. So in the event that, unforeseen circumstances, there are no longer other trains and planes, they can use the railroad trail.
CSX has not been the easiest people to work with at all. So I would have my doubts on trusting them completely, on not coming back to say that they need it. And I guess that brings me to the next question. We're paying for these easements. If they came back and needed the rail, those easements, the permanent easements are paid for, that we can't do anything with. Am I correct in assuming that?
If they reactivated the rail trail for train purposes, then yes, then we wouldn't need those permanent easements. But at that time, the city has the discretion of deciding whether it wants to release those easements, if it still needs them. Because if the purpose of the easement cannot be served, then that's a time to reconsider those issues.
If I could just add, there was one example of a permanent easement that was shown on the slide, which was a rebuilt sidewalk. So that wouldn't be affected if in the unlikely event that the rail was reactivated. And I believe the other, maybe John can jump in, but the others are utility easements and pole
Yes.
attachments.
Yeah, there's one for overhead wires, one for a guy wire, and 4 others for signs and road striping for like safety purposes. So those items would need to be still there if a railroad came through. They would still need to they'd still need to erect their own lights and signs and such.
When this was initially presented to us, I believe with Lisa Valley, it was up to Mill Street at that point that we own. I know a lot of people are talking about up to Mechanic Street. Has that been purchased yet?
So
Or is that in the works?
It's in the works. It has not been purchased yet, although CSX did, without disclosing too much, CSX did give us their best and final offer. I've been working with Wendy Weeks, our grants administrator, to apply for a grant that would cover the full acquisition cost of that, obviously. Assuming that KP Law is on board, if we do get that grant, then we would be discussing that. But we are not at that exact point yet. We have to figure out if we were even awarded that grant, which we don't know yet, so.
What's the estimated cost of that grant? I mean, if we have a long way to go, I mean, how much more money are we putting into
The
that?
grant, I believe, is $800,000.
100,000?
800.
800. And what would the city's share be in that? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know, but I could find out from Wendy Weeks and provide it to you guys after.
I'm kind of concerned because the initial presentation, there were many people that were supportive in the neighborhood, thought it was a good idea. Seemed like the public hearing after that seemed to change some of the lines, seemed to be more property that was needed. people that were promised fences weren't getting the fences. I think there's a lot that's changed. I'm uncomfortable because I voted initially for the funding because I thought it was a good thing. And based on that information, now if it's changed, I have a bigger concern with that. And I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. And obviously, there are enough people here to ask the questions tonight.
So I do want to clarify, because that has come up quite a bit. And I obviously was not here when the federal funding took place, but there were contact diaries that Lisa and everybody, John and myself, anytime we speak with somebody about this project, we log it in something called a contact diary, specifically for people who have encroachments. And I think that's really important to point out because literally almost every communication has been logged. So we have proof of when the person was notified, what they were told. And what I saw was prior to federal funding being used, the discussion was if the city, with if being the keyword, can give you access, or if the city can give you a fence, then we would look into it. And I looked through every one of the contact diaries and I didn't see any promises made specific to fencing. I'm not questioning what you're saying, I'm just saying what I saw, of course. And then when the federal funding was used for the acquisition, it became more clear that federal funding restricted any encroachments in the entire right-of-way. And there's some discrepancy about, what people are saying, well, we were told this was a 12-foot trail. Well, the paved trail, of course, is 12 feet, but the right-of-way, as you can see on the plans, is larger. And the use of federal funding prohibits encroachments on that right-of-way. And Pam Marquis from Mass DOT pointed out to us that that's true whether a rail trail is put onto this property or not. Those are simply requirements of the federal funding when that was used. So that's when those notification letters went out in 2017. I believe there were maps attached to those letters that actually showed the property owner what that would be. So we did bring those contact diaries with us for you guys if you'd like to review them. I can't speak to exactly what someone was told, but I can only go off the contact diaries. John I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I'm not sure.
No, it's the same thing that, I've been in front of the council before for whether it was Mechanic Street or North Street. It's the same process as far as keeping track of who you talk to, when you talk to them, and such.
Are these the seven permanent easements, were they all agreeable?
I have one was donated. The other ones, you saw the one up on the screen.
The buyer was agreeable.
And that's basically correcting something that should have happened 50 years ago, as old as that sidewalk is. I think it was done that way just to not leave a gap between the back edge of the sidewalk and the step. So they were amenable. I haven't actually talked to anyone else. They haven't come in to discuss it. They have.
So what is the end with the next phase that you're looking at? What is the end or the beginning, however you want to look at it? Where will that be on Mechanic Street?
About Jenny's.
Right by Ginny's.
Where?
Right by Ginny's.
Okay, and how about, are you looking to do any more in Fitchburg? On the other side of the Fitchburg, beyond what we have now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure what the end point in Fitchburg is for Phase 1, but I know ultimately it goes to the intermodal
Yeah,
center.
Clarissa could speak to that. She's
Yeah.
Yes, in Fitchburg, we have to go across the railroad tracks, and it will go from First Street, which is where the bridge in 5 pieces goes across the railroad tracks because it is a very tall bridge. It has to accommodate the double-loaded railroad freight cars. And then it comes down on the other side of the tracks and it goes to the intermodal center. So that will be part of Phase 2 in Fitchburg.
What is the projected total cost of the project? Well, if going from end to end, completely finished? Approximately, I'm not holding you to the number.
No, I mean, the first phase of it We, at one point, I think it's about 18 million for both Phase 1 and 2. Those are dollars of 2017, and in 4 years, we hope that have come down, I think, don't you?
No, I would,
No.
we certainly
But
know
about-
that's not the case.
No. And for Phase 1, I think it's 8 million? 8 million.
All right, thank you. That's it for now.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Again, we'll go around once and then come back if you need another question. Counselor Dabrowski, any questions?
I believe I understand the property rights issues. I think my questions would be more along the lines of safety, but I think that
Please.
might be, it seems like that's off topic with what you guys have presented today, so maybe I'll ask those questions later.
It's not off topic, please do. If you
Well-
feel free, if you feel comfortable with asking the question, go ahead.
Well, when it's said and done, you know, what is the plan to monitor this? I know these things have been successful, very successful in Concord, Lexington, and Lincoln, but, you know, that's not where we are. So just, you know, what is the plan to
We probably
govern
have
the
an
safety of them?
Sure, we have a number of people here, I think, who can speak to different aspects of that. Clarissa being probably the first person, as we have also anticipated you would all bring this up.
Okay.
Fall River has also done a rail trail project, and I think Clarissa would probably highlight
Yeah.
that. We have an article for
If you
it
can
as well.
frame your answer around the demographics that are connected with
Right.
Fitchburg and Leominster, please.
Absolutely.
It's totally different down Concord, Acton.
I know that, and I live right near the Minuteman, so, and I was on the select board, so I know that one intimately. But we have worked on trails in Fall River, we just finished one, and it is a tremendous success. And not only is it a success, but it was an abandoned railroad trestle. It is now a point of community pride. I have seen so many people that walk that trail that didn't have the opportunities in their neighborhoods to be outside, and they take trash bags with them, and they clean up the trail. And I think one of the things that because I design and hopefully build trails like this in the 26 gateway cities. That's my job. It's very important to me that the gateway cities get the same kind of treatment that my hometown of Arlington gets. It's very important too. And I think one of the things that's unusual about this trail is that you have a trail association already in place, and they will be helping to monitor along with the city, obviously. The Trail Association has already raised money to maintain the trail. That is unheard of. I mean, I don't know of any other trail in Massachusetts that has that kind of support. So I think that you're very lucky, and it's not, this work that Massachusetts is doing is happening. I'm working on a trail that's in Everett and Malden and Revere, Saugus and Lynn. Those are not, well, Everett might be a little richer now than it was, but those are not fancy communities. Those are communities that need bike trails. So, thank you.
Would anyone else like to?
Counselor, you still have the floor.
Yeah, but, I mean, specifically, how are they policed? How are the trails policed? How is that supervision conducted? Or, I mean, is there a plan in place, or is that something that we're gonna work on later? Do we know?
Yes.
It is traditionally the police's role. In Fall River, for instance, we have a great picture of the police on their bicycles going up and down the trail, and they do that a number of times a day. They are the ones that know what kind of activity is having on the trail and what kinds of things they're looking for. It's also very good for the police force to get out on bicycles. So, but it's a program of the police, and it's the city Obviously, the DPW is going to have to be involved because there will be, tree limbs that fall down, things like that we're trying to deal with during the design. But, there isn't a trail that doesn't have to have some kind of very basic maintenance, like a park. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so essentially, once it's constructed, the municipalities
Right.
are going to have to develop a plan to
Correct.
police the trail. Does that summarize it?
Yeah, yes, and along with that plan, just the fact that you'll have a lot of people out there using it. So you'll have eyes out there, you'll have people watching it, and I know from trails near my home, it made a big difference because people feel invested and they go out and everybody wants it to be a success, and I think you'll have a lot of use, and the more people you have out there, I think the safer it is. So it really, it changes it. Right now, you have an overgrown corridor. There's lots of places for people to do illicit activities, and once the trail goes through, you're going to have more open right of way. You'll have sight lines, so people will really be able to see what's going on in the trail. And people out there will be seen too.
I'll give someone
All
else
set
an
for now?
opportunity, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Feckley?
Thank you. So we received a list last week,
Okay.
last meeting.
Yes.
Nikki, this list, are you familiar with this list?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So is this it? Is this
That's the.
Are these the-
Yes.
the possible takings or?
Yes.
Okay. So there's 25 altogether. Well, there's 26, but there's 25 because one of them is donated, right?
Mhm.
So I think everybody's here tonight, probably, that's on this list, which I like seeing, because I like when people are here to hear what's going on and to ask possible questions. So as far as you know, this is going to be it?
And those are the easements, not to be confused with the encroachments.
Right.
Correct.
So people may be here this evening who actually have encroachments and not easements, and that's where we wanted to clear up the confusion so that, you all would understand what we're asking you to vote on eventually.
But you don't expect that there's going to be any more easements?
No.
No, not
That's
for
it,
phase
okay.
one.
All right, the other question is, since the president's opened up the floodgates, I was going to wait, but my question is, are there any conservation concerns along the rail trail?
Angela Chabowski is the conservation agent. We went to the meeting, the MIPA meeting, and we walked the trail with them. I'm not a conservation person, so I probably shouldn't speak to that directly, although her response to me was that she didn't feel like there were a lot of conservation concerns with this, and I believe it was addressed, John, already. You
Yeah.
were at the meeting, so John could probably speak to it more than I can, but.
The conservation agents from both Fitchburg and Leominster, along with representatives from MIPA, conducted a site walk. And although we have not received the MIPA clearance yet, we are expecting it, I think it's early next week, which basically means that any concerns that the agents and/or MIPA have been addressed by the project.
Right.
Okay. And will we be notified of that, or how are we going to know that?
We could, I don't see why not, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be good if you,
That's fine.
send
Sure,
that
I'll make a
notification to
note.
the city clerk.
Sure.
So that the city council could be notified. The other question is, when does this work start, and when do you feel it would be done?
John, do you want to talk to that? Construction?
We expect to advertise the project for construction on September 14th, and
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Yes.
This year, phase one.
So then-
And then
Construction next spring?
next spring.
Okay.
You may see some activity during the winter. It depends on what we have for winter and how aggressive the contractor wants to be to get out there.
And
So,
And then we're
anticipated
2 years.
completion? 2 years?
2 years for phase one.
All right.
And the September 14th date is actually why we have the date set up the way that we do. So John can explain a little bit more about the offer dates and why the vote would take place on the 26th of August, and also why we ask for the appropriation ahead of time so that that money is allocated, so that once those takings are approved, we can have everything, the checks paid out in time to meet the federal and state requirements to meet that September 14th date. So that's where all the timing for this comes up. But if John.
mind?
Of course, yeah.
And just on the September 14th date, that is the last day to advertise a federally funded project in federal fiscal year 2019. So we really need the council support to make that date.
Yeah.
So when we present people with the written offers, with the just compensation reports, we're required to give them 30 days to review it, to look at it, come talk to us, before there can be any vote on the matter.
Okay.
So we had a couple of revisions on our survey plans, so then we had to send a couple more letters out and give them the 30 days to look at it also. So that brings us to the 26th.
Why I got bumped out a little. And it makes more sense to just vote on all of them on the same day versus having you guys vote on some now and some later. So we just pushed them all to that date.
Okay, thank you, I'm done for now, thank you.
All set for now? Thank
Yep.
you. Council Bonanza?
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse the expression, but this project is already down the track a bit. And we voted at least once, right,
Yes,
on this
sir.
project already to authorize the city to proceed with the accessing the federal funds to purchase the former rail easement. So as a council, we have at least directly nothing to do with encroachments. We have an impact on the project as a general matter, but when it comes to encroachments, that's not before us.
Correct.
That's a federal requirement, right?
Yes, sir.
So what's before us, is just so the public understands, is the improvement of the temporary and permanent easements, or the approving the taking of, or the necessary takings, because obviously you're not going to acquire all these by agreement, right?
Correct.
So a number of them we're going to have to do by eminent domain, and that starts here, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing is we have to approve the money to pay for the addendums that are attached to the eminent domain orders of taking, right?
Correct.
That's correct, to pay damages.
All right, so let me ask a fundamental question. Now that we've approved at least part of this project, what happens if the council doesn't approve the order of takings or the money to fund those takings?
So would like to, if she's willing, to have Pam Markey from MassDOT answer that question as
Okay.
we reiterate her answer. So we might as well hear it from her.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So first of all, as previously discussed, the encroachments have to be removed. There is a requirement when you utilize federal funds for acquisition. It's rarely ever done in Massachusetts. And there is a repayment requirement if the Title 23 federal funds are not put into a Title 23 eligible project within 10 years of the obligation of the original federal funds in August of 2017. So we don't want to be in a situation where we have to go back and request the city to reimburse the federal government for the money. And at that time, it will be fair market value. And the purchase price of rail corridors is increasing. So we also don't want to jeopardize the project. It's a regionally significant project. It's going to connect and give opportunity for people in Leominster to travel to the commuter rail, to have opportunities to go elsewhere. It's a great community. I work on bridge projects, roadway projects, bike path projects throughout the state. I work in Westfield. I work in the tiny town of Monroe with less than 100 people. I work in the city of Boston. And a lot of times when these types of projects come in, people get very concerned about the impacts, especially when it's in your backyard, your front yard. I have a family. I certainly understand initially what the thought is. When we go through these projects, I have personally walked the trail corridor at least half a dozen times, maybe more. There were some, I had to wear closed boots. There were a lot of needles on the trail. We saw gang activity. And, I have seen this in Holyoke. I have seen this in Northampton. I have seen this in Adams. And years later, after the trail comes in, everybody's very excited about the project. People can move their families throughout the trail. When we are talking about that 5-span bridge, one of the things we're talking about is also the ramp system. We don't want to have it in a situation where people could hide around the ramping up. These are things we take into account. I just did a large pedestrian underpass project in downtown Springfield to get people under the rail. And it was an area where people were crossing the active tracks with baby carriages. It was very unsafe. But it was in an area where they had to have a lot of police cameras. We had to build the lighting in. We had to have special caging to protect the lights, to make sure we could keep it really safe. Again, it's in a very urban environment. And we made sure that we had clear lines of sight, and it was designed so that before you decided to go through the underpass, you could look through. You could fully commit. You knew what was on the other side before you went over. We take all these into account. There's, a big team here tonight. This is just a fraction of all the people that work on it. As I said, we all have families. We're all committed to doing the best design we can with these projects. So I know that there's, it's a lot before everybody. There's publications. I know Craig Dellapella writes a lot about rail trails. And we do see later when we come back that I see these trail projects, you can utilize federal funds in the future for the capital improvements, which is kind of nice. And when we go back and we see the appraisals later on, the values have significantly increased. People want to live around the rail trail. We see that in Arlington. I worked with Arlington on a rail trail project. I mean, again, Pittsfield, it doesn't really matter where you are. We see a lot of improvements.
I just want to understand, I appreciate the comments relative to safety, but I just want to understand, we've received federal funds already to purchase the easement, right? The rail easement.
Correct.
And we're going to be, if we don't follow through with this project, we are going to be required to repay the federal government for those monies?
Correct. It's a federal statute.
And the monies that are used for this construction of Phase 1 are coming from where?
The federal government,
All of it?
80%. 80%.
Where does the other 20% come from?
Mass DOT.
And how much is the city's contribution to it?
Initially, I think it was 8. Was that? Okay.
that's what this
The right-of-way, and then they paid a small share, what was it, about $300,000 for?
It was about 360, I think, initially, but I don't know. Since then
That's kind of the number I recall when it came
Yes,
before us in
correct.
17,
Yeah.
was that our contribution to the entire Phase 1 was about $400,000, something like that?
That would make sense.
So if we don't pass this, our contribution becomes paying back the federal government for all of the monies that they've advanced thus far?
At fair market value.
Yeah.
So fair market value, you mean fair market value of what the rail easement would be at that point in time?
Correct.
Okay. So what is going to be before us, not yet, but I guess it's coming before us, is to purchase 20-something temporary easements. I saw the period, 5 years. That seemed like a long time. Is there a particular reason why it's so long?
So we usually suggest a minimum of 3 years. Sometimes, we are in New England. Sometimes we could run into issues with construction with the weather. There are constraints about when you can put materials down. We also, try to go through and minimize impacts to abutters and property owners through the construction process. We could shorten the term of the easement to 3 years, but then the risk is you don't want to have to go through the acquisition process again. Each year you pay on the easement is a certain cost. You can't go back without having to reappraise. Your appraisal fees can be fairly significant, so you're better to pay additional money for extending the term of the easement out and not needing it.
Can anybody give us a sense of what the actual construction period will be if it goes without any, significant unforeseen difficulties?
2 construction seasons from next spring without any issues. And the date of recording at the Registry of Deeds is when the clock starts ticking on the temporary easement. So you almost use up a full year, or a good 10 months before you actually get into real construction.
I see.
And that's part of the reason.
That's helpful. So we're talking about, for all intents and purposes, 6 permanent easements that are either going to be contested potentially, or they'll take the ad damnum and go away. You gave us a little bit, but could maybe John would be helpful with this, or anybody else. Can you give us a little bit of a feeling for what each one of those 6 are?
Yeah. Well, the first one is 6 North Main Street,
Okay.
for a sidewalk. The next one would be,
And the only reason that's getting addressed is because the other side of the intersection is getting addressed, and the federal regulations require that the whole
yes, the
intersection
whole thing has to be done.
brought up to standard, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The second one is for overhead wires to go over the unnamed brook behind the Longhorns.
Okay.
Because we're building a bridge, and they need proper clearance, so they have to move a pole. They move the pole, it changes the location of the overhead wires. So we need, the rail trail is actually fairly narrow through that section back when the Water Tower Plaza was getting constructed.
Those wires already existed,
They
being
already
changed in
exist.
location?
There is, yes, there's an
Okay.
existing wire line, transmission line that runs along the rail trail. Along with the relocated pole, there's going to be a guy wire. That's a separate easement.
Same electrical appurtenances, but a different landowner?
Yes.
Okay.
And after that, it's State Street. It's a private way. It's public from North Main Street to the railway. Below that, it's private into the complex. That's an easement for signs, because people are going to be driving. So they need some proper signs, and they need some symbols on the road to let them know that there is, in fact, bicycles and walkers and pedestrians going back and forth. And it's the same thing on Battle Street. There's 3 over there. So that's it's the same thing, signs and paint and striping, that sort of stuff. And being as they're private roads, we have to compensate the adjacent landowners.
Okay. That's all I have right now, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cormier.
Thank you. Somewhat building on what Councilor Bedanza had asked, I see what our obligations here in Leominster are. What posture is, if you know, Fitchburg in at this time? Do we know that?
Yep, so Fitchburg unanimously approved all of their easements, I believe, at their last city council meeting. I did watch the meeting, I didn't attend it, but they did approve it.
So they're on board with easements, everything going forward with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they're actually a step.
They're a step
Oh.
ahead of us, yes, in the timing. I also may be wrong, but I don't think their council meets as often as we do in the summer. So they got theirs done a little bit sooner.
Okay. I think most of the questions I had and that I've spoken to people has to do about the privacy and safety. Just, is the rail trail going to be available year-round? Is this something that people will also use throughout the winter?
We have discussed that. I believe the answer to that is yes. The mayor, while he's not here, he will be here at some point this evening and can address it. But it is my understanding that it would be plowed. It would be effectively transportation. So the understanding is it would be available. I'm not sure of all the specifics. I don't know if anyone on the team here knows exactly how that's going to work. But yes, I believe it's going to be available in the winter.
Okay, and now would that clearing, plowing of the trail, would that fall onto the responsibility of the DPW?
Yes.
I believe so.
And yes, we do have the association, although I don't know what our discussions will be. There are members of the association here this evening, that's why I'm looking over here. We haven't exactly identified what the different roles and responsibilities will be for trail maintenance, but I believe the DPW would handle things like plowing. I'll have to confirm with the mayor. I don't want to speak for him. He'll probably, not appreciate that, but he'll be here shortly.
Okay, thank you. That's all I
Okay,
have.
thank you. I yield the floor back to any councilors that have any other questions that you thought of. Council Frida?
I'm not sure who wants to answer this, be somebody
Sure. Thank
from
you.
DOT, but how many takings were there in Everett and Revere and Arlington? Were there many?
The ones in Revere and Everett are just being found out now. They're way behind. The survey is just happening now. So you all are a couple of years ahead of that. In Arlington, there were, and this was 26 years ago, and luckily, I'm old enough so I remember, there were quite substantial ones, and it's all worked out, and in fact, many new businesses have opened up on the trail, bike shops and ice cream stores and coffee shops. So it's now not an issue. And I'm sure it was 26 years ago, but it isn't now. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. If I may, we do a fair number of rail to trails project, and at least 99% of them are through eminent domain takings. So,
All set, Counselor?
How's that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by councilors? Okay, again, this is a public informational session before the council and also the community. And I'm going to break the protocol and allow the audience to come to the microphone and ask any specific questions. You may be in a situation where there's a significant answer that has to be given. So I'm going to ask you to ask for your consideration. The city council clerk is going to get names and addresses as they come up, and if you can get back to them in a timely fashion. If you can't, don't feel comfortable answering it in a quick fashion this evening.
Sure, thank you.
Okay? So, again, this is not a public forum, and it is not a hearing, but I am going to allow people to come to the microphone. When you come to the microphone, please keep in mind there are a lot of people here tonight, so if you could keep your comments or questions within a 2-minute time frame, it would be deeply appreciated. The other thing, too, is for the record, please state your name, your home address, and/or a company that you represent, if in fact you feel comfortable in sharing that with us. So I'll open up the microphone. No one has signed up. Feel free to come to the mic.
Trying to make it quick because I have to
You're
get back
fine.
to work.
Totally fine.
Jody Joseph, 20 Tilton Street, Fitchburg, Mass. I'm representing the Longhorn Steakhouse. As technically I'm a renter at the Longhorn, I'm not an owner of that property, so I probably haven't been notified of any takings or easements on that property. So I'm just wondering how do I get a list of the the easements that might affect my business or my parking lot area?
The Longhorn itself wasn't notified, the owners were. The easement that'll affect yours won't affect the parking, it gets the guy wire easement, so there's a
I
plan.
heard that, it's just, but that's why I was here in case there was any surprises.
Yeah,
But, so there won't be anything happening in the parking lot
No.
or?
Nope, not through.
Thank you.
Nope.
Jody, thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Votour, 125 Hill Street, Leominster, Mass., Director of Veteran Services. I think this is a awesome opportunity for the city. It'll benefit our disabled veterans immensely, those that, find it more difficult to get up and down all the curbs and things like that, especially those veterans with prosthetics. So I think this rail trail is going to be a boon, and we support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Noseworthy, 95 Smith Street. Just real quick, I really support this rail trail. We go to Northampton a lot and utilize that rail trail. But in addition to that, I'm a homeowner. We've lived here about 11, 12 years. My home is now finally worth more than I owe. So thinking about maybe even moving to another home within Leominster, but I'm concerned, Shaw's is vacant, Kmart is vacant, and when I was looking at homes in Leominster, there are a lot of foreclosures, which bring property prices down. I am thrilled that anybody would come and bring us all of this money, all of this opportunity, and create something in our community that will actually encourage people to come and buy homes here instead of being worried about what might be worse. I think it's better to have well-lit areas, paved areas, drug dealers aren't going to stand on a paved area and in a well-lit area, but right now, from what I understand, with all the brush and the woods, there's seedy stuff happening behind people's homes. So I just want to say that, like I said, with Shaw's being gone, Kmart being gone, I'm sort of saying what's next. I'm really glad that somebody would invest in our community, and hopefully we can get it up to all the fancy communities we're talking about, Lexington and all those other places. Let's look to make Leominster like that instead of sort of bringing us back down and saying, you know, how are we going to make this happen? So thank you for your time and investment in our community.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I have some information to pass along to the council member. Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you please share your name and address, sir,
Yes.
for the record?
My name is Dino Di Placido. I represent Route 2 Hyundai, 743, 745 North Main Street.
Are you the manager there, or?
I'm one of the owners,
Okay, thank you.
and I'm trying to state here that we purchased, in 2004, we purchased the building, which had, and the pictures in the back will show, it had a fence in the back, already been there with a parking lot associated with CSX, delivering furniture, et cetera. And now they're telling me that that's going to be taken away. It's going to, if you look at the picture in the back, it's going to shut down my rear entrance. I won't be able to exit the building just for this, this domain construction. While we have 80 feet in the back, they could easily push the corridor towards one end and use 16 feet on either side and allow me to rent, lease, purchase, whatever you want to do it, 40 feet so I can keep doing business. Otherwise, I'm going to lose 30% of inventory, and I got 45 employees. They all live in these communities. I'm going to have to get rid of them, at least 30% of them, with this change. So I've been trying to work with them for years, but I haven't been getting any results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, so we do have the contact diaries from prior to, obviously, my arrival in this position, and John can speak with it as well, but there's documentation that shows that Route 2 Hyundai does have an encroachment onto the right-of-way. John, it appears that that was shown on a survey.
Yeah, it was shown on the, when they purchased the property, there wasn't an existing encroachment right behind the building, and they expanded upon the encroachment once the rails came up. So that's really what he's been
And in the contact,
utilizing that.
yes, and in the contact diary, I believe Lisa Maroney had spoken with the owner, encouraged them to try to enter into a lease agreement with CSX if possible, as that would be the only way that we would obviously be able to allow them to effectively enter into an agreement with us. Lee from KP can talk more to this as well, but they do not have a license agreement or a lease with CSX. So due to the federal funding restrictions, we obviously have to have them remove their encroachment. We are sympathetic to, obviously, the fact that that means that they cannot park their cars there anymore, but there's no gray area there in the federal funding restrictions. It's a true encroachment onto the right-of-way.
Okay. And at what point, when does the city own that land?
When we purchased it in 2017, and prior to that, CSX owned it, so that was when Lisa had encouraged the owners to try to enter into some sort of an agreement. I believe they may have tried to. He can obviously speak to that. There was notation in the contact diaries that talked about the paving. I believe one of the owners had come in, expressed to Lisa, we have the diary, that they were going to pave it. They were encouraged, not to. And the paving took place anyways, so now the paving is an encroachment. It needs to be removed.
Okay, thank you. All set, sir?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay. You can take that up maybe with the mayor's office.
I have, and I talked with the state. The state says it can reach an agreement with the city, and the mayor was on the phone with us. And he says, well, you have to do a proposal, and the state will approve it. But the city, the mayor is unwilling to do anything proactive. In essence, it's going to shut down my rear exit, and that's going to be a fire, the fire exit. You have to have exit in the front and the rear of the building. With a temporary easement, John was there. It takes me, I got 7 feet to the end of the building, and the 5 feet easement, give me 2 feet. A car is wide is 9 feet. How am I gonna get the cars in and out without interfering with their, so I can put grass? I'm willing to lease, rent, put a fence up, put light cameras for the people as well. But, you know, it has to be some flexibility here.
Okay.
I spent $3.5 million renovating the building for the last 5 years. We sold 25,000 cars in the local community since I've been there. So we produce a lot of tax revenue for the city and a lot of happy local employees and customers alike. So I cannot just shut down the building so you can put a walkway.
Okay.
Thank
Ma'am, would
you.
you like to address this?
I was just going to say that, and I think we spoke at the design public hearing or before the design public hearing, but unfortunately, the use of the federal funds on the purchase does not allow the city at this point, once they took possession of the property, they cannot lease the land out to a non-Title 23 type of use. Now, I don't know if possible, I have seen through the fence the back of your building, and again, I don't know, I mean, you're right, I don't know what the setback requirement is off the rear. You're very close to the property line, maybe 2 feet off the rear property line. I don't know if there's a way you could put a door on the side. I did try to discuss with you, possible, maybe there's a way that an access could be granted, and it's something we could certainly talk about, but.
I've been trying for years to talk about it.
But it's
Nobody
not,
listens.
it's not for parking, and again, we'll have to look at your situation, but there would be no lease or sale. They're not allowed, they're simply not allowed to grant it.
No construction.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
John Ferrara, I own 45 North Main Street, and any correspondence in the future, would you please send them to 18 Hardy Drive, because I have received nothing other than Nikki and John affording me the encroachment on my building. We bought the land from the railroad in '67. We tore down the original building, we added the new building, and from the back corner, according to Whitman and Bingham's survey, we were 10.2 feet from the line. Now, we put an addition on the building. I went down and physically measured from that point of encroachment. We're 10 feet, 1 inch from the corner of our, what was the building that we added the addition to. So how was this line figured on the railway, on the, for the trail? According to my plans, I have no encroachment. How could we figure this out? I have the plans here if anybody'd like to look at them.
Can you guys address that right now, or meet with John afterwards?
We can address this afterwards, but I'm just figuring out how, and if, did Bingham make a mistake, or was the rail trail off? I know it's only inches, but this would take the encroachment away from this building.
John?
Yeah, I think we can meet afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like a copy of the plans now so you can look at them? All right. Now, these plans were done in '81, after the building was built. And I sketched in the addition we put on. So I understand that this is very close, but you showed that encroachment number 32, I believe.
Yeah,
And
it's a half a foot. So it is inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And we
So-
would not require that he remove his building, obviously. He would enter into a license agreement with the city through KP Law for the portion of the building that encroaches, because it has a foundation. I don't think anyone's looking to make them remove their buildings. And we would do an appraisal, obviously, to figure out the value of that land lease, and it could be minimal, and then, obviously, KP Law would work either with the owner or his attorney to enter into an agreement that protected both parties.
Okay.
Unless you guys have anything
What?
you want to add. Okay.
1 second, John, can you please, you want to give your home address as well?
18 Hardy Drive,
18 Hardy Drive, thank you.
Leominster.
Councilor Bonanza?
Yeah,
wanna
thank
weigh
you,
in?
thank you, Mr. President. That just prompted a question. I understand the federal requirement, but here, John, in particular, we're dealing with potentially inches. If I'm the property owner, I appreciate that my building doesn't have to be torn down, but I don't really, in terms of selling the building someday, I don't want to be telling a prospective buyer, hey, by the way, 6 inches of this building is an encroachment on city land and there's a license agreement, blah, blah, blah. I mean, is there a way, sort of a de minimis situation where a plan could be developed that permits, if the error is Whitman and Bingham's and not yours, I don't mean you in particular, but, the survey that was done in connection with the purchase of the rail easement, is there a de minimis way we can deal with a problem like that? Are we talking 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that?
I'd like to hear the city solicitor weigh in as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the question first has to be resolved with DOT and the federal requirements if they would permit those kind of encroachments to remain. So I think that's first a discussion with the Department of Transportation and to go and review those federal requirements. If permitted, then we could come before the city council and ask for an easement allowing
So
that encroachment to stay.
Sounds like almost like a margin of error sort of thing.
Correct.
It's close to that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Bingham did this.
John, maybe you could just.
81.
Yeah.
The building was built in 68.
Maybe you could just take like 4 or 5 inches out of your tape, John. When you measure it again.
You're welcome to have that, because I have more copies of that.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, councilors. I have a packet also, if I could distribute it.
Please share it.
In the essence of time, because I know there's a lot of people who want to speak.
Take
so
your
this-
time, John.
Hopefully.
John, can you just give your name and address?
Certainly. I'm John DeChico. I reside at 193 North Main Street in Leominster. I'm the property owner at that address, and I'm also here this evening representing my parents who own the abutting properties on both sides of me, actually bookended 187 North Main Street and 199 North Main Street. So what I've included in that packet is the first page is actually the assessor's map here in Leominster that shows our property, the DeChico properties. There's 3 of them there in a row. And, of course, where the proposed rail trail is presently. But I just want to kind of give you some quick background information. First of all, we're not newcomers to the city of Leominster. My family has owned that property at 199 North Main Street for 73 years, 187 and 193 where I reside, 64 years. 4 generations of my family have resided here in Leominster. Presently, our combined tax burden to the city of Leominster is just under $18,000 a year in property taxes, so I think we pay our fair share, like most people do. This is not an 11th hour attempt by me to thwart this project. I'm not standing here to speak in favor or against, but rather a particular issue that I started with this project when it was at first announced in 2016 and made a request at that time to move forward on some type of an accommodation for privacy and security fencing to be placed along the sector of the rail trail, which is approximately 208 feet in the back of our properties. And the reason for that request is pretty straightforward. If you take a look at page 2, you'll see where the proposed rail trail is elevation-wise, where our property is currently. It's approximately 15 feet above the back of our property line. I believe, and I can be standing corrected, that we're the only property owners in Leominster that have this situation facing them, in that our property is well below the rail trail, thus eliminating our possibility of putting up a privacy fence and a fence to keep people out of our property. And whereas most of the residents here in Leominster that abut the trail are either level, so they can put a fence, privacy fence within the legal limits of 8 feet, because we can't go beyond that restriction, and/or the rail trail is actually below their property line, so they have a natural barrier, if you will. So I started on that quest, as I said. I've attended every single meeting, every public meeting that's been held from the get-go of this project. And unfortunately, in the last meeting that was held by Mass DOT at the Hilton here in Leominster, which was the 75% announcement of the project, unfortunately, they did not see fit or necessary to put this fence in place as part of the program. Even though, and there's documents here, I only put a fraction of the correspondence I had because this project, I started with the project 2016, started with Ms. Peters' predecessor, Lisa Marone worked on this. She arranged a meeting in 2017 where we walked the trail with the initial design team that came out. They were in 100% agreement that this was a reasonable request, given the topography had been drastically changed from the plans they had, because the plans they were looking at, frankly, showed what the rail trail looked like before the culvert remediation project that took place now 6 years ago. When the 100-year-old culvert washed out, the city had to go to battle with CSX. It took about 4 years, I believe, in litigation, and they finally remediated the project. But in doing so, they uncovered plastic debris, sediments from the old Foster Grant property, and a decision was made on site, and the DEP allowed them to do this. Instead of trucking all the material off-site, which was originally in the plan, they simply encapsulated it and built the rail trail up on our side of the fence. So we're stuck with this 15-foot, elevation. And as I say, it left us with no recourse, no way to change anything. And that can't be dug out because, again, it's an encapsulated surface now. There is, the potential for contaminated materials in there. So that's the way that was left. So we kind of paid the price on both directions. Seeing as this rail trail is not simply a scenic project, and it's being built and it's been proposed and it's been funded as a result of it being called a transportation mechanism for Leominster and Fitchburg, what it really means to us from a privacy and transportation situation is that we are now surrounded by transportation systems. I mean, yes, some can argue you chose to live there. Yes, we did. But I'll be honest with you, as a kid, it was easier having the rail running there only twice a day than it's going to be having literally thousands of people traversing this trail all the time. And the rail company never encroached on our property. Since those rails have been pulled up, I'm telling you, we have continuous problems with trespassers, both on ATVs, dirt bikes, and by foot, literally to the point where they come down the trail or off the rail bed and walk straight up through our yard and right through the driveways. So we have no protection whatsoever. And I think we deserve to have some protection. We deserve to have some privacy because, as most people have said, this rail trail is going to improve from a standpoint of not just safety, but it's going to improve the values of properties. Well, I would say, I'd beg to differ, that it's going to devaluate our property when people can knowingly just walk right through your yard. I don't think anybody wants that happening. It's private property. We're paying the taxes on it. We have a right to be protected. I mean, we have Route 12 out in front of us. We have that noise. We can escape it because we're fortunate enough to have a decent backyard, but we can't escape it if we're surrounded by it. We even have the life flight helicopter that literally their path, when they come in, and they come into the hospital frequently, they fly directly over our backyard. So, we need some relief here, and we need some help. We can't get, I was sincerely hoping that I would not have to come to the city council or to the city of Leominster and put another burden financially in asking that this fence be paid for out of funds from the city, but rather it would have been accepted by the state as a reasonable accommodation for abutters. But obviously they have chosen not to go that route. So this is my last course of resource, is coming to you folks and asking that you give this strong consideration, because I think, again, as good stewards of the property, my family has invested well over $1 million since purchasing this property almost 70 years ago. We got a huge investment there. I think we deserve to have an opportunity to protect that investment and also keep some aesthetics to the land that we're paying taxes on. So I hope you'll, in future deliberations, you'll consider this. And certainly if you have any questions, I'm available anytime, any place. I would be happy to meet with any of you individually or as subcommittees to talk about this in further detail. And I also would invite you to come and walk the property, because you can't honestly appreciate the dilemma that we're in unless it's kind of like if you haven't walked in somebody's shoes, you don't really get it. And to close, I'll just say, I'll steal a line from a kind of a comedy movie, but this is no comedy by any means. The famous line in Christmas Vacation when the boss discovers that, his decision to cut out the raises for the employees isn't so glamorous anymore. And he states, the bottom line isn't so great when it hurts regular people. Well, what you have in front of you tonight are regular people of this city, and so those considerations need to be made as you go forward with this project. And again, I'm not against it, but I think we have to, maybe take a step backwards and think about the impacts that it's going to have long-term, long after the federal money's gone, long after the state money's gone. Everybody who's here is still going to be here and live with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there a response?
It is.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm Arthur from Mass DOT. We concur with you. We agree that you have legitimate concerns, and we would like a chance to sit down and go through it. And I understand that there was one solution that had been thought about, but
That's correct.
because of some of the contamination,
Yeah.
that we weren't able to do that, but we
The
want to
most-
address it, and we feel it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's correct. We have been working with Mr. DeChico, and as well as the state. Larry Cash is the project manager on this project. He wasn't available to attend tonight, but initially the discussion was to lower the berm by about 6 feet and then put some plantings so that the trail would be lower and there would be a natural privacy barrier. But as everyone just mentioned, that won't obviously be possible with the existing situation there. But the project manager did see that he has a need there. So I don't know if it's like a real privacy fence or if it's a safety fence with some landscaping to offer privacy, but it sounds like there will be something. And Clarissa's the landscape and designer there, so she can speak to this as well.
Just from the design team's point of view, I particularly feel that it's always needed a fence, and we'll work with you to find out, to talk to you about what kind of fencing, where exactly you want the fence, and what kind of planting. It will help you get some relief. He is right. It's the only place in Leominster where this is the case, and we cannot go into that berm because of everything that's buried below it. So, thank you.
May I suggest that conversation happens before the petition comes down to the city council?
Yes.
As I'd like to hear Mr. DeChico say he's okay with this, at one
Yes, sir.
point.
We'll get that resolved
Okay,
for
thank you.
you.
Thank you. Counselor Frida?
Just an observation. I've known Mr. DeChico for a long time. He's come to us a number of times to try to do something about this, says he's contacted a number of people. Why did we have to come to this meeting tonight and say you're going to work with him and help him? Why wasn't this at least suggested prior to tonight? That's the frustration with government. I think that's the frustration with people who get concerned. It should have been done before tonight to have a discussion and fix this problem. Just my opinion.
And we did. We've actually been in pretty consistent conversations, and again, the contact diaries will show that. You guys are welcome to read through them. The discussion of lowering the berm and adding evergreen trees was the most recent conversation. Mr. DeChico actually emailed the mayor, stating that he didn't feel that was sufficient. So I talked to Larry Cash, the project manager, who said that he would certainly consider putting up a black vinyl chain link fence with some more plantings. The idea of avoiding the true wooden privacy fences was to save the taxpayers money on maintenance, to avoid graffiti, things like that. The black chain link fence with the plantings is less maintenance for the city. So we have been having those active conversations. It wasn't until tonight that I think there was a realization that the berm couldn't be lowered. This is a big project with a lot of moving parts, so obviously need to apologize if there's any disconnect between, something that I didn't know that, for example. I wouldn't have known to bring that up. But now that it's brought up, we'll obviously address it in a different manner. But we have been in constant communication with anybody who's been expressing concerns.
Counselor Frida, you all set?
I'm all set.
Thank you. Peter?
Peter Latches, 22 DeMassa Drive. I'm going to ask, I understand we're asking questions.
You can, absolutely.
Okay, and then I'll have my opinion. Is that okay?
That's absolutely
Okay,
fine.
Okay. Some councilors brought up some interesting takes on this. I want to make clear now in front of the council, I'm going to ask a question. I think I already know the answer. Phase 1 will be completed from Carter Park to the end of the Leominster-Fitchburg line. in 2 years?
The phase one includes some of Fitchburg as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that include Water Tower? Does that include Water Tower Plaza with a bike route through it?
Phase 2 through Route 12 project, please.
So,
Yeah, we'll have Arthur speak to that as he's
So-
with MassDOT.
right to the microphone, please, for the TV audience.
So for, by Water Tower Plaza, there is a separate project. It's Leominster Route 12 at Hamilton Street, in that section from Washington Street up to Hamilton Street. And it'll also, it's a safety project, and as part of that project, there will be impacts to the credit union. So, but that's, and that project will construct a segment of the trail. There's been discussion back and forth whether it would be constructed on a Twin City Rail Trail, but the timing is such that we don't want to see we'd rather not see temporary work go in and then taken out by a second project. So we're anticipating the Route 12 project will construct that segment of trail from Hamilton Street to Water Tower Plaza.
Okay, thank you. Peter, you good with that?
No, I want to clarify. What I'm interested in 2 years, will Phase 1 be completed from Carter Park to the Fitchburg line? And want to be the rail trail by Water, what is it?
Do you mean, will the section going through Water Tower Plaza be included in that initial completion?
Right,
I
in
understand.
2 years.
So,
So-
maybe not, right? Is the
I
question.
don't believe it'll be completed, and I think some of the time frame that's been given so far is optimistic. It's probably, we're talking at least 2 full construction seasons from the start of construction. So we're talking about starting in 2020, and we would have construction all the way through the end of 2022. And my guess is there would be some items that have to be completed in the spring of 2023. I expect that the work on the Route 12 project would overlap within that time frame. So right now, it's hard until we have fast dates on when that project can be advertised. I don't know exactly what that update is, so you're right, it would probably be more than, it probably would not happen, it won't happen within 2 years
So
that section would be completed.
Phase 1 necessarily won't be a bike route for maybe 3 years to go from Carter Park to Fitchburg.
Correct.
Okay. I wanted that clarified. Now, what one council was mentioned, Carter Park to Mechanic Street. I understand that they're going to have to seek new funding to complete that.
Would have to seek funding because we haven't purchased it yet. So it may be grant funding.
Grant funding.
That's
Either-
the goal. That's what we're applying for right now. But
So-
it's not part of, it would be a new acquisition. a new
Right,
use.
right. So that's, right, that's more spending, but council is concerned with the spending of the city. It's already 400,000, and we're looking in a dark area where we really don't know how much more Leominster's going to spend. I know it's hard to answer, but that's the truth. Okay. That's all I want to make clear. Leominster isn't done spending money on this project, and who knows what comes up. One councilor mentioned that. I thought it was a good point. Now, I'll mention this. I've talked to many people on this. To me, it's very devastating to talk to these people. They're busy. They live on North Main Street. They have a busy, busy highway. Some just bought houses, and they don't. And now they're dealing with a road in back of them. And I feel bad for them because they'll have swimming pools back there. When you're in your backyard, do you have privacy? Yeah, many people do. They won't necessarily. They'll be in their bathing suits waving to the bike people. But the thing of it is, I just want to, that's concern to people. Some people will be losing their jobs at the bank. They have to go elsewhere. Or, the bank will find them a new job. So the thing I want to make is that I'm very, very concerned. Nothing was brought out about safety. And the big concern is that it goes through 11 streets, the bike trail. If you think about it, it's, let me see. From Carter Park, you go to Route 12 and 3, you got to cross over. Water Tower Plaza, Doubletree, Inman Way, Moore Street, Hamilton Street, Priest Street. And then there's Benson, Bemis, Fifth Street Bridge, and Brattle Street. And that's it. So in that short period, people would be crossing some very, very unsafe streets. I know there's lights, but I think mixing bikes and cars in such a close, high-impact area is bad. But I look now, and the horse came before the carriage came before the horses. We've already sunk money in, and we're in a situation where it's too bad. You look at a project, and you say, if I had it to do over again, I would have looked at, if it's not a 12-foot path, it was an 82-foot path. I don't know, I didn't know it was that devastating to come across that way. And I know that if you go down to Carter Park and go to where Mechanic Street is, the Ginnies, that would be unbelievable taking the land there, because everything's so close. We don't have a tape measure, we didn't measure it, but I'm sure there's a lot of problems. So, it's already done. So, I want to bring attention, I'm really worried about bikes and cars. I think it's a bad situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We would like to point out that the right-of-way is still not taking land. That's still city-owned land, so even if we did continue with going from Carter Park to Ginny's, would be, I think Commissioner and John could talk to this, but we would be acquiring the right-of-way. We wouldn't be looking to take people's property, at least as we understand it at this point. Is that a fair estimate for what we see for the future? This next section, yeah.
It's owned by CSX.
It's owned by CSX, correct.
Just one quick question from my seat. Hyundai has a situation, I think we all understand that. Are there
Yes.
any other folks in the corridor, businesses or residents that have a similar situation?
So, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There were people who were using the right-of-way for private use, but they did enter into agreements with CSX. The Wellington condominium development was one of them. They had a lease to use parking, fencing, and driveway access. Their fencing was not able to stay in the project. I think John can speak to this more as well, but their parking and driveway was, and we've met with them and their board and their new management. That's fine. Mr. Marchetti is here as well. He owns some property on North Main Street. He also had a pre-existing lease agreement. And Family Medical, I think their dumpster encroached. But they had a pre-existing agreement, so we're able to work with them. And Route 2 Hyundai and American Auto Body has been also vocal with us, although we've been trying to work with them. And they're a butter, I guess. I don't know how to describe Miguel. The adjacent property, there was a property that had been using the right-of-way as a driveway. And unfortunately, obviously, that cannot continue due to the federal funds. But when it's been brought up to us, we've looked at it. The big key here, it's pretty black and white. If they had an agreement, a prior agreement with CSX that got assigned to the city, we would do what we could do, provided it was still safe access, to work with them. If they didn't, then unfortunately, there's just nothing we can do about it. It violates federal funding and would be at risk to repay that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mark Schofield, 138 Peterson Street, Leominster. I own the property Summer Street and Water Street. We encroached a long time ago, cleaned it up, and we've been using it for many years, but I haven't really been addressed as what's going to happen. As if they come in and take everything they say they're going to take, I've pretty much got nothing there to deal with. So I guess I'm in stage 2 because we're on the other end of it. So we did talk to the mayor. I went in with my father, and
Right.
we had a little discussion about it, but
Right.
it's kind of really vague.
Okay, you have the ability to talk about that tonight. That's in the next phase, but since the question's been raised.
I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I think the big thing that, and please, if Mastat wants to chime in, or Sharon wants to chime in, or Lee, some of these restrictions are due to funding. So if we don't know what funding we're using yet for phase 2, it's a little harder for us to say what we can and can't do.
Okay, I understand that. Okay.
I think parking's a big concern too. There's not a whole lot of
Sure.
parking down that area, so it's,
Yeah.
but if, I don't know, I really haven't got much from anybody on this. I know we're encroached. We were told we're encroached, and we knew, like 30 years ago, we pretty much, cleaned up the railroad stuff and put some pavement down. But
Okay, so that is not on the agenda this evening. However, we do have name and address. You heard the concern, so please address it accordingly when it's necessary.
Yep, and as soon as we do get to that point, they would for sure be notified.
Okay,
And we would
thank you.
address it.
all right, thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you very much.
Just give me a second, I got a lot of paperwork here. My name is Mary Jean, 40 Royal Oaks Way, Leominster, Mass. I am here representing American Auto Body, as well as Miguel Martinez, who owns Sunroof Sound and Design next to us. We have been working with Nikki, this is absolutely true, but we have had really no help at all. So I just want to start at the beginning. And this abandoned land around Route 12 corridor has been bought, sold, and built on for approximately 30 years. Anybody that lives here knows that. All right, to suddenly declare all these businesses and homes have encroachments that are 30 feet away from the Twin City Rail Trail was not honest. I went to those meetings too. I never heard anything that didn't say we weren't paving more than 12 feet. And not that I mind that you're going beyond the 12 feet, and I understand we have federal regulations, but could you please produce for me one piece of literature that has been put out to the public that says, in fact, from the get-go in 2016, we knew we were clearing 85 feet of land, because it's not out there. I spent 2 weeks searching for it. I got the actual meeting notes from the Hilton, and it clearly says 12 feet of land. So I think that's a big contention here, people. We need to pay attention. Nobody knew we were clearing 85 feet of land. If we were doing that, just tell the people, be upfront. Say, hey, this is our intention. It was never told. It was a huge understanding to us when we found out. But that's neither here nor there. I just want to let you know that for everyone here that we think this is all well and fine, these right here are the encroachment letters that went out to everyone. So it's not a small deal. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of letters. There's a lot of cost to this city. Who's paying for this mailing? Who's paying for all of this? I've yet to see that done. So I received these on a Freedom of Information request. And then I also received these notices of trespasses, which are the encroachments, which we really haven't talked about tonight. And I wonder why. These encroachments, which I have sent to some city councilors, and not all, and I will tell you why you didn't get my handout tonight, because the website still lists a councilor that's not here and doesn't list the Ward 2 councilor. So, like everyone else, I made a presentation, and if I can give you these 2 copies, you'll have to make 4. Unfortunately, I had to give some to people in the audience. So these encroachment letters that we're not talking about, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of cost to the homeowners and the business owners. How many of you go to the package store on North Main Street that's painted black? They want to take down the wall that stops you from dropping 30 feet. They want to take down the fence. They want to take away the garbage disposal. Huge cost. Right next to that, A&P gas station. We want to take the driveway, the fence, and the gas regurgitation system. And I can go down the line to Big Steve. And Big Steve's sorry that he can't make it here because he loves you guys with the free vacuums. But Big Steve had to close his free vacuums because he was forced by this process to move his pumps 2 feet forward. Who here, as landowners or small business people, think it's appropriate that we should make a business pay $4,500 approximately, because he hasn't gotten the final bills in, to move these pumps 2 feet forward, 30 feet above the rail trail? I don't think anybody, okay? So this project is out of control and you're not telling the truth. Now, as for Miguel Martinez, he's a father of 4, supporting a family. All of a sudden, the rail trail shows up and says, we're going to fence you off. Now, I'm being told by someone from Sanic, and he is not here today when he came, and he plainly said that the businesses are being fenced off as to stop their ability to encroach. Is that true? I'm looking at all the state people, and no one's looking at me with an answer. I'm going to say it one more time. And this gentleman with the blue shirt was there that day, right here. You were there. Again, I'm going to repeat this so everyone hears it. Are the fences being put up along the encroachments where businesses are to stop the businesses from encroaching on the land?
In this case, yes, I think I can answer that pretty honestly. I've had that conversation with John Hendrickson from Stantec, and in the case of Sunroof Sound and Design with Miguel, he has his property. I wish I could show you a visual, but he literally has been driving in a circle around his property, which cars would drive onto the right-of-way. And obviously we can't have private use of the right-of-way, number one, but it's a safety concern as well. So if cars are used to driving down this driveway and driving on, if they don't put a fence up and a car drives on and hurts and injures someone on the trail, there's two reasons. One is to obviously stop the encroachment, but the other is to address the safety concern by the fact that people have been driving or parking. We don't want those people intersecting with.
But yet, behind lo and behold, what did we find out tonight? Behind a Longhorn Steakhouse and behind all those places, why can't they drive into the rail trail? Because there's a parking lot right there, but there's no fence there. So we have behind the Longhorn fence, we have behind the urgent care, and we have behind Applebee's no fence because they say there is no easement. So is there a fence there or is there not a fence there? Because obviously people could drive from the parking lot into that rail trail.
So Stantec can speak to that as well, but I know when in my talks with John Hendrickson and Jeff
201
Moran,
North Main Street, I can see you looking like, where am I? Oh, I'm at 201 North Main Street, going down towards Fitchburg.
the elevations are different as well. Is that
It's a
part of that?
parking lot.
The elevations between the parking lot and the rail trail behind Longhorn are different. The trail is higher at that location. And there is, in addition to being curb at the back of the parking lot, there's also a ditch that is formed between the parking lot and the rail trail itself. So, you know.
Well, I walked out there on Saturday respectfully, and there was no ditch. Me and Peter walked the whole trail Saturday morning. You guys be with Peter at 7:30 in the morning. That's all I got to say. And we did the whole trail, and I was out there, sir, and there is no ditch where I'm talking about. Perhaps you're confused, but where I am, it is totally flat land. There is a berm, a cement berm, that stops the parking lot, and I would say that is right on that 12-inch land of measuring. But again, we didn't bring a tape, but there is no fence there. So you're telling me that we see these elderly people that drive into the buildings all the time, then an elderly person can certainly drive through this parking lot. What I'm trying to make the point is some businesses are having fences and some businesses aren't. Don't you think we should work with Miguel to save his business? This is a real Leominster family. I mean, his father-in-law is Judge Reynolds. This family's been here a long time, and we just get no, and we can't. Maybe we can put a brim there instead of a fence. Maybe we can do something to save Miguel. Because what else was flipped off tonight, and I was pretty surprised by the city council, is we're losing jobs in Leominster. There is going to be a loss of jobs, not a gain of jobs. The whole trail is fenced off. There is no way to access any place on North Main Street without entering the roadway. Okay, Peter kind of touched on that. We've got 11 streets you got to go through in less than 4 miles. How many of you like those DoubleTree? You got the Plaza, then you've got all the way down Bemis Road, mind you. Don't even get me going on that one. And we're just going to have people pressing the button, stopping the traffic. So let's just say, for instance, we had how many people are you anticipating a day using this from all your experience? All right, so let's just guess. Let's just say we designed it for 20 people a day, and I'm just going to guess, okay? So if 20 people a day get off their bike, starting at Water Tower Plaza, and start hitting the crosswalk button, can you imagine what it's going to be to drive down North Main Street? So anyone who lives in the city of Leominster, once this is built, don't go to North Main Street. And it's also going to back up The other end, because when we get to Hamilton Street, you can't come back over the bridge because that's backed up. And we know traffic is a disaster. So remember, the current plan that these people put together to you is that we're going to go through all these stoplights and press the button to cross the street. Okay, who wants to put their kid at the bottom of Hamilton Street to press the button to go across? There's not even a crosswalk there now. And that brings me back to the last point. All right, so it sounds really good. We didn't mention any of the encroachments, which are $20 or $30, $300,000. I don't know how much, because nobody knows. And don't you think that the city of Leominster might have found out what it was actually going to cost their citizens and taxpayers for these encroachments before we started this program? And so I have a very big question for the council. If you don't take your encroachment out, who's going to pay? How much is it going to pay for the taxpayers for these encroachments? I mean, we're talking about some big encroachments here. I mean, this is not overnight. They want parking lots taken out. And so if these encroachments are not taken out by your date of putting out the contract, what happens?
They would likely be removed by the contract.
And the contractor removes it, and who pays for the cost?
It would be a combination of state and federal money.
So there would be no cost to the city or to the homeowner if the contractor had to remove the encroachments. Okay,
If
then,
it's removed by the contractor, then the contractor is being paid by state and federal money.
okay. So these letters that people got that said they may have to go to court for legal action by the city, will there be legal action taken against the homeowners who do not take the encroachments away? Yes or no? Because the letters say
Mayor,
so.
who are you addressing the question?
Well, I don't know who's
The
answering the
audience,
question. Who would have the, I thought the state people were informing me. I didn't mean to, I'm just trying to look at them when I talk.
There's no microphone in the audience
All
for
right.
the people.
So do the state people know you've built a lot of trails? We heard everything today. How does that work? From your experience of building trails, does the landowner be forced to pay? Does the price of the contract go up because then the contractors are doing extra work? Then do we fall short of funds? From your experience, what happens to the encroachments that aren't removed?
So normally,
Excuse me. If people are complaining at home, they cannot hear anybody responding.
I understand that.
Just
I understand.
They can't hear anybody responding.
I understand
So
that.
If you could use a microphone, that would be really helpful.
Thank you. So, again, normally, this is a rare situation where federal funds were utilized to pay for the right-of-way. In circumstances, this is actually the first trail where federal funds were utilized to pay for the right-of-way. And so what normally would happen is you could work more with the landowner to leave encroachments in place. And normally what would happen is that you would only need to have the long-term use of the trail protected, the maintenance of the trail protected, and you would need to remove encroachments for the construction. Because Title 23 funds were utilized, it's a different situation, and I haven't worked with it before for a rail trail project. As far as the litigation, Mass DOT did not write the letters, and they would be enforced by the community, should the community decide to go down that route. And again, we are sympathetic when we have the ability to work with the landowners, with the council, with the city, and, again, after something's deemed to be safe. There are certain encroachments. I know you talked about fences. I think in some cases they might have been guardrails. Again, I think it depends on the topography. I'm not an engineer. I can't respond to specific questions regarding those locations. But as the project development engineer from District 3 alluded to, at the end of the day, if encroachments weren't moved, we need to keep advancing our project, and therefore our contractor, through the use of federal and state funds, would be moving the encroachments.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer. I
Mayor, go
appreciate
ahead.
that.
I think the 3 years, is in the event that the homeowner or the business owner has an issue with the value.
No, that's easement. We're talking about
We're talking
encroachment.
about the encroachments.
Okay, then in fact, still, is there still a 3-year statute of limitations sort of thing where people could contest it in 3 years?
That's only for a taking. They
Okay.
have longer time for
All right.
this.
So I think the answer is, if the question relates to the taking for the easement, they have 3 years to go back and to contest the value of that. In terms of the encroachments, I think it's pretty straightforward that, it's a whole lot of properties lined up real close together with small frontages, and that's why we have so many.
But the
that-
frontages are 30 feet up the hill. Big
Right.
Steve's Car Wash had to move his pumps 2 feet forward, Dean, 2 feet forward. That's all he had to do was move them 2 feet forward, 30 feet up the hill from the trail. That's an unnecessary expense for any
Okay.
small business,
Is
and
that-
that needs to be addressed, Dean.
All right, is that Big Steve's property or isn't it?
Well, that's a point of contention that I started this conversation off. This property has been bought and sold continually down North Main Street, like most of these people here.
Right, and
You know that. I'm not telling you anything.
Everybody has a right to protect their property. So if that property belongs to Big Steve, then Steve should be here tonight, or a representative for
Well,
Steve.
Big Steve is sick,
Excuse me.
unfortunately.
Okay. But Steve can have a representative represent him. I can't represent him. So if that land or if somebody has an agreement with the railroad, then they should come forward with that agreement so that we can see that. And some people have, and we've addressed that. We've spent a lot of time on the legal end addressing those things. So if Steve has something that shows that that property belongs to him at the Registry of Deeds or title something, then we can deal with that. But other than that, we can only go with what we have based on the plans that we have. So
But as the city of Leominster, Dean, do you really want to incur these small businesses, and the people are starting to line up now, all these costs? We're talking $4,000 and $5,000 a whack.
I'm not going to, I didn't come down here to debate anybody.
No, but I'm just saying, while you're here, we said we
If-
could ask questions. My
if-
question is to you,
If you
Dean,
want us
very
to
clear.
start from step one and talk about how the design was done and who gets a fence and who doesn't, we'll stay here tonight and do that. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And we'll address each situation. We don't have a problem because we have been on the phone with people trying to address each person's situation and trying to accommodate everybody in every possible way we can. But if somebody doesn't own a particular piece of property, I can't help them if they don't own the piece of property. As Mr. Schofield said, I sat right there with him and his dad and said, we'll do anything we possibly can to accommodate you.
Great,
But-
so that-
But we have not got that far.
All right.
And everybody here on this team that's been here was instructed by myself to do everything they could to accommodate every single person in any possible way as long as we could.
Great, so that brings me back to this. I filed this Freedom of Information request, and I filed it on June 12th, and it says very clearly, any and all documents since 2017, written, lodged, or electronically produced from the city of Leominster in regards to the rail trail to the landowners, both commercial and individually in the city of Leominster. Heard a lot about logs tonight. I didn't get them. Also didn't get anything that has to do with the eminent domain for Workers' Credit Union, and I've been on the phone with him. He submitted 3 sets of plans. Each time he submitted the set of plans, he was told this mysterious federal person declined them, but he never spoke to a federal person. So I was so frustrating, and I have gone back and forth with Caitlin and trying to get this information. I actually had to call Wendy and ask her to put a note on Dean's desk, which I still haven't gotten a response from, that I think that at this point, based on all the controversy, the misinformation, and yes, you only said 12 feet, you didn't say 85, for reasons I don't know. I think all the information should be out for the public to see, and I think we should put it out in City Hall somewhere where everybody can see all these letters that were written and all the information that has to go with it, because I'm going to close in this. This is what we're asking you to do right now. We're starting from Carter Park going to First Street in Fitchburg. We do not have the funding for either end of this program, of this project. That is true. So we're asking you to start construction in the middle. Now, in the middle of the middle, we do not have funding. Because if you saw the handout that I gave you today, there is no funding in place for Hamilton Street or North Main Street until 2021. So they want to start construction, and if I don't mind, one more question. Where are you starting construction, Carter Park or in Fitchburg?
We don't know yet because we have a order of construction and we have a plan, but until the contractor's on board, and then they will give the actual construction order.
What does your plan say right now? Fitchburg to Leominster, Leominster to, which direction? That's what
I don't believe it's defined.
It's not defined.
All right, so now you're going to see that we heard just a few minutes ago. We're starting on Carter Park, we're going to First Street, but now we don't know which way we're going. So the whole point is, if,
That's not
if,
accurate.
That's not
if
true.
we're...
That's not true.
He just said he's not sure where we're starting or which way we're
won't know.
going.
We haven't got that far. You have a pre-construction meeting, there are a whole lot of things to determine.
But we don't have any money for the middle, for the funding, there's no funding for Workers' Credit Union. Who's paying for the eminent domain? Do you guys know they're taking
All
eminent
right, yeah.
domain? Where is it
I think you're
coming
saying things
from?
that are just inaccurate, and so let
No,
me just...
eminent domain
let
is
me just
being
respond.
taken for Workers' Credit Union,
Okay.
Dean. That is appropriate. I did speak to the branch manager myself. I've been in the branch. You can talk to him. They've
Okay.
submitted 3 sets of plans. So please, Dean, answer
All
the
right,
questions.
sure,
Don't give
I
us
will.
just these lines.
Okay.
Mayor, we're gonna-
I
we're gonna
respect what
hold
you've
off-
said, but
hold off
enough
one
is
second.
enough.
We're
I'm
here
done.
tonight as a community to gather information.
Right, but we got to tell the truth.
And there are a lot, I respect your position. However, there's a lot of people that still want to address the council or the people that are here tonight, so all due respect to them. You have a tremendous amount of questions that need to be answered. You know, start rifling them through the mayor's office, and I'm sure he will respond to them
He
accordingly.
has not. I have been
Well,
calling, and
let's
so
try-
hasn't
let's try it
Dennis.
again. But by law, as you know, we have to start the city council meeting at 7 o'clock sharp. So we're
Thank
going to
you.
pause for a moment, start the meeting. Mayor, I'll give you the floor once we go into recess. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting of the city council for July 22nd is now in session. Please stand and join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with roll call vote of the honorable members of the council, beginning with Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Ottinger.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Bonanza.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Feckley.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Dombrowski.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor Frida.
Present.
Thank you. And I should record as present. We have 7 councilors here tonight. Is the chairwoman of records ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. I have the minutes of the city council meeting of July 8th, and except for just a few very small typographical edits, which I'll speak to the clerk about, I find them to be in order and ask that they be placed on file.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the minutes? If not, so moved. Thank you. Do I have a motion for a recess?
So moved.
Seconded? Thank you. We're now in recess. Mayor, you have the floor if you want it. Come on in.
So the Workers' Credit Union is a totally different project, right? I mean, it's a totally different
Yes, sir.
project. This is part of the project that's going to redesign that whole area in front of the hospital, in front of Longhorn, starts at Washington Square and goes all the way up to North Main Street. In fact, at the intersection of North Main, I got here late, I was sitting in traffic, but at the intersection of North Main and Hamilton, so that we did have a meeting of the minds, because there are 2 different design firms involved in the project, all under MassDOT. We wanted to make sure that these 2 projects blended together, and we did spend a considerable amount of time going over the safety issues. So when we say, do you really want a little kid standing there pushing the button, waiting to cross? We've spent a considerable amount of time making sure that it is safe for everybody to go through that corridor, by making sure that we took the 2 plans and the 2 projects and commingled them in terms of looking at them, instead of saying, well, there's this project here and then this project. Are they actually going to line up? So we spent a lot of time on that. So when people speak to the Workers' Credit Union, it's a separate project, a different funding source. It's part of the accelerated project list, where it comes up under the category of dangerous intersections. I don't think anybody here would say it isn't. So that's going to be done. That's separate, and totally separate from this. So just to clarify that.
And also a state project, to clarify. That is not a
Yes,
city project.
that is a state
So it is
project.
not
They
something that
listed
we
it as one of the most dangerous intersections in the state.
Right.
Therefore, it's accelerated, the funding source is accelerated, and there are still some issues that have to be worked out with the Workers' Credit Union, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. What does have to do with it is the safety part of it all, where we work at North Main and Main Street to sort of move where the actual bike path will travel through, so that people aren't endangered. And then we have 2 different companies blaming each other, saying, well, we didn't know what the other person's plan was.
Right. Thank you. Nikki, you want to add anything to that?
I think just to address what Mary Jean had brought up, I believe she is asking us to grant easements within the right-of-way to save, in her opinion, businesses to operate the way that they've been operating for a number of years. And I hear what she's saying, but the federal funding restricts that. And we've had a number of conversations with her, and I know she feels like she's not getting anywhere because we can't give that. It's not an option, as you've heard from Pam from MassDOT. So it's definitely, I hear what she's saying, but we can't do it. And that's unfortunately where that stands. You know, she's made a number of requests for us to put her in touch with someone who can do that. I've given her Pam's information at the state level. The response was that she preferred to keep it local, but our response back was that we can't. We just can't. It's a
Okay.
federal funding restriction, there's not a person there's not an additional person. Pam's actually the person to speak with about that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
The mic is now open for anyone in the audience that has not addressed the issue that would like to have any questions asked or raise any questions on the matter. Second time?
Right here. I guess you can hear me. Now, my name is Paul Hebert, Hebert. Just like Hebert candy, it's just not spelled the same, but, I mean, it is spelled the same. Now,
Paul, your
on
address.
Hamilton Street.
Your address, please, for the record.
407 Hamilton Street. Now, I went to the very first meeting they had at the library, and they didn't even have Hamilton Street on the map. What does that tell you? That tells you that their plans are lousy from the very beginning. Hamilton Street and Route 12 is right here, and Hamilton Street's like that. When they come down Lindell Avenue, they come down like there's not even an intersection down there on which is actually Route 12. They come down and then they proceed up Hamilton Street. And you know, when I cross Hamilton Street, I run because I almost got hit twice there. And you're going to have people walking and bicycling and everything over there? You're no nuts. The fact is, I hope that you all cross the street and get hit.
Paul, take it easy, buddy. You and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah,
Just
and I'm telling you right now.
Relax.
Yeah.
We're listening.
Well, I asked Lisa Maroney to put a fence along the 200 feet that I own there. You know what I got? 0. I talked to the guy on Hamilton Street, on Fitchburg, and I told him, I says, you can do what you want. I'm not against it. I'm not for it. But I want a fence over there. And you know what I got? Nothing. I didn't get anything from Leominster. I didn't get anything from Fitchburg. Let's back up a little bit. A couple of years ago, Fitchburg couldn't even afford to keep the lights on the street. And now they got money for a rail trail? You're all sick. I think you should address the problems of all these people that brought up. But I'll tell you one thing. Don't put up a fence, and if I catch any of the rail trail people crossing my property, if they...
Paul, you want to stop at that moment.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to stop.
With respect to you, you don't want to say what you're thinking. All right?
I'm just telling you, don't step on my property, because I got this.
I got you. Okay. All right, thank you.
We'll consult him before we do a site walk.
All right, that's good.
Just kidding. I'm just joking. We have actually the safety
It's
concern.
Nikki, listen.
Sure.
He's very serious.
I understand. I'm not
And I've
making light
known
of
that
it.
gentleman for a long time, and he's had
Understand.
a lot of issues with that railroad
Understand.
track. So as his ward council, but also a friend,
Understand.
it's legitimate.
Understand.
And
And
what
we-
he's saying is exactly right on the money.
Absolutely. And we
Okay.
have had quite a few meetings actually about the safety of the crossings at Hamilton Street. I attended quite a few of them with MassDOT. Arthur and Pam were there. We've had meetings with GPI, who's the designer for Stantec, designer for the Route 12 project, as Stantec would be for this project. I also have a child. I have a 4-year-old who I hope to use this trail with. So, I'm not making light of it. I truly mean that these safety meetings
Thank
have happened. But I for sure would call him before stepping on his property. But we really and truly have addressed this over and over with both sets of engineers, to the point of, I think the engineers could probably speak to the temporary crossing, the temporary intention of how the pedestrians would cross at Hamilton Street. We don't have GPI here, obviously, and it's the Route 12 project separate, but I think John from Stantec can certainly speak and Arthur as well. It's an important thing for us to bring up because his concerns are valid.
Right. Our intent is to have people cross at pedestrian push button at Hamilton and North Main Street, Route 12. We did not want to have them cross mid-queue.
That's going to happen right at the track?
What's that?
No, sir.
It'll
Okay,
be,
so explain
it'll
where it's
come
gonna
down,
happen.
it'll come down away from your property as it approaches Route 12.
Yeah.
The trail will bend down closer to Route 12 and then go across at the light. And we're very concerned with people crossing mid-queue, in other words, back 4 or 5 cars from the intersection. And we're afraid for people cutting in between cars and then being hit by other cars coming up the street. So we felt it was much safer to bring them down to a signalized crossing at the cross street. So,
It's a tough intersection.
yes, it is.
And it's one that has gotten so much attention since I started in this position almost, in January 2018 or whenever. We've had multiple meetings over this crossing alone. I think some of the meetings specifically were just about the crossing and how that can be made safe.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to come to the microphone?
Thank you. Chris Chinosky, Leominster resident, 42 Academy Road, Leominster. I am also the stewardship manager for the Trustees of Reservations, 157 acres here in Leominster. The trustees support any open spaces for public use and enjoyment, and therefore I also think that this rail trail would be of great benefit to the people of Leominster, Massachusetts, and I hope that both sides can come together and mediate all the amendments needed so that this can happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ronnie Hoole. I'm a lifelong Leominster resident, and I have a bias in this issue.
Ronnie, can you just give us your home address, please?
I live on 36th Street.
Thank you.
I'm also on the Leominster School Committee. But I have a bias. I ride my bicycle, and I ride it religiously. Winter, summer, spring, and fall. And I'm here to tell you, it's hazardous riding a bicycle in Leominster. Whether I'm riding in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, at night, it doesn't matter. We need this rail trail. Yeah, there's a lot of speed bumps with this. But you know, I just came back yesterday. I went pedaling in Rhode Island. And this bike trail that I went on, they had a lot of arguments about building it. Well, they built it. And now they're building even more. Some of you were talking about Arlington, the Minuteman Bikeway, and this and that. We need a bike trail here in Leominster that connects Leominster and Fitchburg. My ideal is Leominster connecting to Boston or Worcester. There is no bike trail in Leominster except for the roads. And I challenge anyone in here to ride through downtown Leominster. And what happens? You're playing fishtail with cars. I'm 68 years old. I've been hit once by a car. My wife got hit by a car. My wife got hit by a truck. How many people here are going to have to get hit by cars before we have a bike trail? Yes, it's going to cost money, but it's always going to cost money. It's as simple as that. It's a form of transportation. And people have to realize that it is a form of transportation. More people are going to be bicycling, whether you want to hear it or not. It's extremely important. I can't overemphasize it. Everyone who talked here tonight, there wasn't one bicyclist. So here I am. Again, we need to have a bike trail in Leominster that connects Leominster with Fitchburg. It's as simple as that. With all the warts and everything. Work it out. I mean it. You can laugh, you can do whatever you want, but I'm telling you, we need a bike trail. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Hi, Judith Sumner, Recreation Director for the City of Leominster. And I feel that Leominster needs a place for recreation, for children to bicycle and families. There aren't a lot of places in Leominster for children to learn how to ride a bike. I grew up riding bikes, and there wasn't as much traffic, and did a lot of bike riding myself throughout the communities. And some of the streets nowadays are not very safe for bicycle riding. And I feel bicycling is a really great recreational activity, and it would improve, the health and benefits of everyone in the community as well. And I believe it will also improve the value of land for people coming to Leominster. Now, anyone I know that bicycles, a lot of them all travel different places to do bicycling. A lot of people go up to Ayr to bicycle, or Groton, up to New Hampshire, up to Winchington, down by the Concord area. So there's people in this community that bicycle, but they're all traveling outside of the community. And it would be wonderful to have that recreational resource here in the city for our residents, and to improve, the health and safety of all those that like to bicycle. So I, would hope that you would, continue supporting it. I was really pleased to see that funding was acquired for this. And all across through different recreational communities, and when I go to New England Parks and Rec, there's a lot of communities that have bicycling, and they said that it's a wonderful activity to have in their community. And so I hope that that continues here in Leominster. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Coakley. I live at 224 Priest. And the way they have it set up now, after they cross Priest Street, they have to make a curve. It's coming right up to my driveway. I'm uncomfortable with that. I've had things stolen from my car. I've got a motorcycle in a trailer out back there. It's about 30 feet from the house. I don't like it. And they have the electrical thing, so if they put it through, there's 3 different wires coming down. I had a dog that's gonna bark because she doesn't like anything with wheels. I've mentioned it several times. I've been here, public health, works, it's one person, but to curve it the other way. I don't mind it. Well, even when we had the tracks, I've had cats get hit because of the four-wheelers going up and down the tracks. So I'm uncomfortable with it being so close to my driveway and my house because of the curve in it. I could care less. I don't want it because it is too close to my property.
Has anyone had any contact with Speaker to see if there's any modification that could be made?
Yes, sir. She came into my office. I actually encouraged her to speak with John Roseberry.
Yeah, and he wasn't there.
He wasn't there at that moment. It was an unplanned visit,
Sure,
so I didn't
sure.
know if John would be there or
That's
not.
fine.
And we did. I did send over the design of the trail to
Yes.
see if there's anything we can do. It's something that it was fairly recent. I think that you.
Yeah, no, the first time we got.
first time.
I was up here with
Yeah.
the planning board and
Okay.
upstairs. And I went to the meeting down at the
Okay.
4 Point.
It was fairly recent that she came to my office to see if there was, so obviously we can see if there's anything we can do. I don't know why or how Stantec designs their curvature the way they do. I'm not an engineer by any means, so.
They said something about it has to curve after it crosses a roadway.
Which John can speak to. I don't have the exact plan of her location in front of me, but it did sort of curve closer to her property.
Who's responsible for the engineering? John, you are, aren't you?
Stantec.
Stannis?
Yeah, because there's a
Stantec.
telephone pole and it's got 3 wires holding it, so anybody on a bicycle is going to have problems negotiating it. It just
Stan,
doesn't
can you
make
respond to
sense.
this at all tonight?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 2 issues here. First is the curve in the trail. At roadway crossings, the trail is curved on both sides of the roadway in order to slow bicyclists down and to inform them that there is a crossing coming up. So this is a method of improving safety of crossing the road. As far as the utility poles are concerned, the a utility site meeting was held with the utility companies. And while I don't know the specifics of how the poles are going to be relocated, the poles are going to be relocated as part of the project to improve the situation.
I
that she's
don't want it that close to my driveway, my cars, my trailer, and my house. You can curve it the other way, towards the park. Right?
We could look into that.
Thank you for doing that.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
I
So
just,
Stan, you're gonna look
and
into it.
I've got a dog, and she will bark constantly.
If you can look into
And
that,
then
we
I'll have the
appreciate
police
it.
down
Yes,
there,
sir.
and
And if you can connect with Nikki, and then Nikki, if you guys can connect with phone numbers and everything and
Sure.
get back to her in a timely fashion. Okay?
And I
Yes,
will
sir.
say that Stantec has actually been wonderful to work with in the sake of if there's been situations where they can make modifications
Right,
that are
right.
allowed, they've made the modifications if allowed. If there's a reason they can't, and they explain that to us.
Okay, thank you.
it's just too close to my driveway.
Thank you, ma'am.
And to the house.
Okay, thank you very much. Microphone's still open.
Hello, my name is Justin Noseworthy. I'm 15 and I live at 95 Smith Street. Just like Ronnie, I am also biased towards the rail trail. I bicycle a lot, almost every single day, and I too can agree that the roads are very dangerous. And I have been looking forward to this trail since the start of the project. I think it would be very good for our community. My grandparents live in Northampton, so we go there a lot. And I bike on the rail trail quite a bit, and I've noticed that there are restaurants and bike shops and plenty of businesses that have opened along the rail trail since it was built. My dad told me that when he was younger, it was smaller, and as they were building it, he saw the businesses open himself. And even in New York, I biked from Lake George down to Glens Falls on the rail trail that's there. And Glens Falls is a community that's not really wealthy like Concord or Lexington. It's more like Leominster or Fitchburg. And I've also noticed that there were plenty of like ice cream shops and restaurants and bike shops that also opened there along the rail trail. So I think that it would be good for kids and people of all ages really to exercise along the trail, to walk, run, bike, do whatever. I went to the first meeting at the library, and I remember someone saying that it would also make going to the football games at Doyle Field a lot easier for all the people in Fitchburg if they wanted to bike down to the field. It would easily enable that.
That's all I need.
I know people do care a lot about their sports.
Let him speak. He's doing a good, you've
Doing
done
a great job.
Great job.
Everybody all night.
That's right.
You can listen to you all night.
Bravo.
So go ahead.
Right.
Nice job.
So I think it would be good for our community. Honestly, I think there would be a lot of economic development involved with it, and I think it would just be good for our community.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to modify a comment. We're going to have the Fitchburg football team walk. So the kids will be tired when they play. It's a great job, young man.
When
Awesome.
transportation was different, Mr. President, they took the trolley.
That's a great idea. Hi, good evening. My name is Andrea Freeman, 431 Pleasant Street. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. Thank you all, this team here, for all the work that you have done on this project so far. Thank you to this team here for all of your work. I'm embarrassed to say that I have been advocating, urging, working for this project since before that young man was born. Since 2003, there's been a group of citizens from Leominster and Fitchburg who have been working to advance this project. I've lived in places all over the country before I moved here in 2003, and I love walking, I love biking, and just like Judy said, much of the time, my husband and I have to put our bikes on our roof of our car in order to go somewhere else, in order to ride in a place that feels remotely safe. I would love to be able to bike more. I would love to be able to walk more. It is so unsafe just along downtown, getting to Watertown Plaza where the sidewalk ends within shrubs. I mean, this city it's got the scale that can be good for walking and biking, but the infrastructure is designed for cars. And, bikers and walkers are not traffic, they're not causing traffic we are traffic as well. And so this is why we need to design and plan and invest not just for vehicles, we need to invest for all of us. And I realize there's going to be some impositions for some people who have, been able to take advantage of some land that's not been theirs, and that's a tough situation. But it when it's not your land to start with, fair is fair. So thank you for your time, and thanks for consideration.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Marchetti. I'm a property owner at 853 North Main Street and 650 North Main Street. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to weigh in on the rail trail project. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for businesses, and I think, among other things, it's going to significantly enhance the community. There's really not too much more I can say. Mr. Hool pretty much said it all. I'm a biker myself. We all have to make some sacrifices. I purchased the property back in 2017, and I had some some visions of creating a parking lot and doing a lot of other things there. But then I decided that the benefits of the trail in terms of the access to the community and the enhanced security that it offers is number one. It's been a big priority with us. We've got a lot of riffraff coming back there, and I think that putting everything on the scales, I think it's a tremendous idea. And so I really don't have much more to say, but good luck. You guys got your work cut out for you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Thais Sobrino. I live at 227 Priest Street. My house sits between Kathy's and Mr. the Chico's, and where it curves on her driveway, it starts on mine on the other side of Priest Street. And I'm not against the project. I love the project to be done. But at the same time, I'm expressing here my concerns about privacy for the homeowners and safety. Because just last month, I had a lot of problems with homeless people who were like camping 40 feet from my property. And I had the police had to come a couple times and remove these people, but still we always had issues with people. I caught people sitting on my porch. They just come in. And so we request a fence along that side, and I'm still waiting to hear if that's gonna happen. That's my concern. My concern is for safety
I'm
and
going to echo that question
and
myself.
privacy, because now we know the berm is not gonna be lower, and there's no privacy for us.
So from the beginning of the backstop for the baseball field up the corridor to Priest Street,
familiar.
what is the fence?
Yeah, so we're
status?
familiar with her property. We sent her out a right of entry form. It would have, not sure the exact date that I sent them out, but they did go out. And the right of entry form was for a 6-foot, John, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
5 foot.
5 foot, so sorry. 5-foot black vinyl chain link fence. It would go on the property line, and the right of entry form was to request access for the workers to step onto her property to install the fence on our property. I also spoke with Clarissa from Brown, Richardson, and Rowe about plantings and whatnot to guide people away from, obviously, her property and the adjacent properties. And as John and I said at the beginning of the meeting, we requested 14, my numbers are all getting messed up right now, 14 right of entries, and we've received only 3. So we do need, obviously, people to submit those so that we can go ahead with the fencing. The other note that I want to, or the comment that I want to address that she made is the loitering and littering and the homeless that are back there. Now, one of the biggest points of us doing this project is to clean that up. And we did do a site walk over there, and the design team felt that a fence would be suitable given the positioning of the properties. But we hope that just the cleaning up and the creation of the trail will sort of self-police and remove some of that loitering and I don't want to say, homeless specifically, but any sort of loitering that's going on there right now.
Are the plantings, Nikki, going to go on the rail trail side of the fence or the property owners?
I believe it would be on our property, but I'll let Clarissa explain that because she's
We
not
ran
the
into
real estate
problems with
designer.
that at Doyle Field.
Understand. I'll let
And they
Clarissa.
had to remove them for safety purposes, so I'm
Okay.
just concerned about people hiding out in those
Sure.
spots.
You're absolutely right, sir, that I think we need to work with each homeowner and find out exactly what they want, because you can imagine if you put an evergreen screen, that people are going to hide behind it.
Yeah.
But there are ways of working. We'll work with them to come up with what they would like to see, along with the fencing.
Okay, thank you.
But you're completely right about that.
Thank you. The microphone is still open.
Okay, my name's Wayne Vickery. I live at 145 North Main Street.
Wayne, can you spell your last name for the record, please?
Yes, Vickrey.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we just put in all these brand-new sidewalks in front of my house. There's a bicycle lane in front of my house. And now you want to put even more traffic right in my backyard. I don't know. You're talking a 5-foot fence to keep the riffraff out. I don't know about all this encroachment stuff. I had 24 foot of my, I thought I was taken care of for the past 25 years. And now you're telling me, no, we're gonna tear it up and put a 5-foot fence right here at your back door. I don't agree with it. And I don't actually understand why they need so much property to put in a 12-foot road. But that's all I got to say. That's it.
Thank you,
Thanks.
sir. Any response to that, or?
We just want to reiterate that we're not taking his property. It's the right of way. And the fence, this is the voluntary fence, correct? Vickery? Yes. So this fence is actually not a required part of the project. Councilor Marchand, you were there when we went out and walked that property to see what we could do. The owners on that section had requested fencing or safety fencing protection from people kind of cutting through their yards to enter into, say, the Doyle Field area or the trail. So this fence is a voluntary option. It's not something that we have to do with the trail.
I understand that.
And it's on city property. It's on the property line is the idea. It wouldn't be on their property.
Okay.
Well, nobody's taking care of it. I mean, we got poison ivy growing up in the backyard. Got skunks, rabbits, everything. We've taken down our border.
Right.
Now everything's getting in. It's like, when is this gonna happen? Or, I mean, just clean it up a little bit or something. Soon.
Well, if the city owns it at this point, we can certainly look into that, see if we can do
I
something.
mean, we
to
had
help.
a trail once,
Right.
and
Right.
then we had the ice storm. They brought in all the trash and dumped it back there. So, I mean, 25 years come and gone, and
Right. Thank you, sir.
My name's Paul Carpenter. I live at 141 North Main Street. I'm actually against it because I do most of my walking around this city because I enjoy seeing the people. I see the mayor every once in a while, and I don't really think that people really need the walkway because there's not too many people that's going to walk from Leominster to Pittsburgh. You know, I walk 4 miles a day, and I enjoy walking and seeing the people that I do see. The mayor would tell you that. He sees me every once in a while. So actually, I'm against it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Oh, and another thing, the lights, the stop lights for the people who walk across, half of them don't work.
We can certainly address that.
Not really.
You
Even
talking
that,
about the buttons or?
no, the lights that tell you to walk and not walk,
Okay.
they don't, half of them don't work.
Knowing the mayor, he'll be on that in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He
You know,
is.
I mentioned it once before a long time ago, but, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Roosevelt from 40 Royal Oaks Way in Leominster.
The chair recognizes former city councilor, state representative. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for your service, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having this meeting tonight. Mr. President, thank you for having the meeting. People do work hard. I want to speak in opposition of the rail trail. I am co-owner of American Auto Body, and they want to take an easement of approximately 500 feet from my business. Now, that sounds like a very small amount of land, but I only have 7 retail parking spots for my customers. And right where they're taking the land is where I park 4 of the cars. So depending on how often they use this easement, I'm not going to be able to park some of my cars there. Getting out of Moore Street is a nightmare. We don't have a light there ever since they made the improvements on North Main Street. It's gotten worse. Sometimes around lunchtime and at 5 o'clock at night, the cars back up past the railroad tracks. So we're going to have a problem when kids and families are riding their bikes are going to go in between the cars. It's dangerous. There's a huge amount of cost to the businesses. I think because I was a city councilor and a state rep for so many years, 27 years, people have come to me and asked me to speak for them and be against the rail trail. So I am not just against it because of my business, but because of so many businesses going to lose thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're going to lose jobs. And it's going to be very hard to make that up if the average person spends $16.34. I've heard that thrown around. It'll take about around 12,000 people a year to make up, in my estimation, for the loss of jobs and the cost of businesses. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Hi, Anthony Zarella, Fitchburg City Council.
Welcome this evening.
Thank you. And I will make sure to let the Fitchburg...
This your first time down here, Anthony?
Sorry, I can't see where... Oh, I'm sorry, I heard you
Is
from
this your
behind
first
me.
time visiting down?
Second, actually.
All right, good. Nice to see you.
Thank you, and I will make sure to let the Fitchburg football teams know to get some good walking shoes.
And they'll be wearing their equipment, by the way, too. So
Absolutely. So, I had a fair bit to say last Tuesday about how it would be highly inappropriate for the Fitchburg City Council to tell the Leominster City Council what to do for Leominster. So I have no intention of doing that.
we appreciate that.
I trust that this body, as it should, will make decisions based on what's best for Leominster, not what's best for Fitchburg, though I hope those overlap considerably. I'd just like to make a factual point about what the decision is. Because there's been a lot of talk tonight about encroachments, and the CSX purchase, both in Fitchburg and in Leominster, is a done deal. The federal funding, I believe it was Title 23, did you say, is a done deal. And that means that unless either city intends to pay back that grant money, the removal of the encroachments is a done deal, regardless of whether the rail trail goes forward or not. There is no option there. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to clarify that this body is not being asked to decide whether or not to ask business owners to remove these encroachments. That's said and done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down tonight.
Thank you very much.
Microphone is still open.
Good evening. Dick O'Brien, 578 Miriam Ave. I want to speak to sort of the larger view of this project. So I came to Leominster in '84, and as an avid hiker and trails person, I've been working here in the city since '84, maintaining and building trails, hiking trails, cross-country ski trails, snowshoe trails. I've been involved with this project from the very beginning. And so from a local perspective, I'm very much in favor of the project going forward. But you should also know, I sit on the State Recreational Trails Advisory Board. I am a member of the Regional Trails Coalition here. I'm a member of the local trails group. And in that capacity, I also sit on the state committee that awards money for projects like this. You should know that the state has recently expanded their trail grant program under the new Mass Trails program. There is the Historic Recreational Trails Granting Program, and now there is the new program, the Commonwealth Trails Program. The mission or the goal of that program is to make strategic connections between these multi-use trails. And so from the governor's office down, there is strong support to continue building this network of rail trails to connect Leominster and Fitchburg, not just Leominster and Fitchburg together, but to Worcester, to the Mass Central Rail Trail, to Boston, to Northampton, eventually to Gardner, and so forth. And so as part of a larger vision, this trail, I think, is a critical component of that larger network of trails. And again, speaking for the state committee, also for the EOEA's executive trail team, there is strong support for pushing these trail projects forward. So I think you just need to keep that in the context. And I attend trail conferences across the country. I've been on the West Coast and the Southwest area, the Midlands, the southern part, and I have seen examples of these rail trail projects done in all of those areas. And all of those areas have gone through this sort of birthing process. I equate it to watching sausage be made. No one likes to see that process, but the end product, after it's grilled up and with some fresh vegetables, it tastes wonderful. A lot of the same thing can be said about the trail projects. There are a lot of issues that have to be resolved. And it will take a lot of effort, and you guys have done a wonderful job at working through those. And there's more discussion and more compromise to be made here. But when the final product is done, when this project is complete, we are all going to look at it with a sense of pride and a feeling that we did something good, not only for the immediate future, but for generations to come, and for the larger region. It will be a definite economic benefit to this community and the region as a whole. So thank you. I hope we
Thank you very much.
move forward on it.
Thank you, sir. Microphone is still open.
Hi, I'm Larry Casassa from Fitchburg. I also serve as the chair of the Twin Cities Rail Trail Association, and I certainly don't want to add any more to the length of this hearing, other than just to point out that the association has been meeting for years now and has raised a considerable amount of money, has been working very closely with both cities And we have a lot of very enthusiastic residents of both cities who've been involved in this association. And the funds that we've raised, we're pledging to use to continue to address some of the issues that have been raised tonight in terms of maintaining the trail, dealing with daily problems that come up, graffiti, coordinating with the cities and their DPWs to try to lessen the load that they have in terms of taking care of maintenance, and also as much as we can do with volunteer efforts. We've already had a lot of people approach us and offer their help once the trail gets underway. So we envision this as being a real community effort, and we certainly stand ready to continue our efforts as a group of residents of both cities to support this trail, and we hope you will as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Microphone is still open.
If it's permissible to address a second time?
You certainly
Counselor?
can. Go
Thank you.
ahead.
John DeChico, 193 North Main Street. Just a quick little anecdote going backwards in time. 5 years ago, as I mentioned, when that culvert project had to be remediated, at the time, the project actually called, the plans called for completely clear cutting from our property line all the way back to Priest Street on that entire corridor. And I actually spoke to the contractor when they showed up on site and the engineers and pleaded with them not to do that because there's 75 to 80-year-old standing, 100-foot standing oaks there. And knowing this project was going to happen someday, I wanted to see a natural barrier exist. In a perfect world, that natural barrier would be enough to thwart people from cutting across our property. But unfortunately, remediating it by doing plantings as been described here or been offered is not going to cut it. It's just not, unfortunately. So I just wanted to say that, I'm all for protecting the environment, and I fought. And the reason they did it is because we allowed them an easement without any preconditions whatsoever. We said to them, you can bring in your equipment on our property, which they did, so that they would not have to clear cut the entire rail bed in order to get the equipment in to do the job they had to do, because most of it was not accessible from the rail bed to remediate that project. So I feel very good about the fact we were able to save that part of the area so that now we're not going backwards and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to put in new plantings to try to recoup what would be, hopefully a scenic rail trail. But on our side is not the scenic part. The scenic part, frankly, is the opposite side of the trail from us, because over that next embankment is the completely open wetland space that will never be able to be developed. And that is a scenic area for people to view when they come down the rail trail in the future. So, thank you.
John, thank you. Would anyone else like to address this session? Please, Mayor, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is not the first process or the first project that we've had to sort of make us all think, right? It's the process. There are things that most nights there's nobody here in the council chambers. But this is part of the process. It makes us all think harder. And this team, I mean, it's a pretty big team when you see them all together here. They worked really hard on this. And I think from the very beginning, I think the message was, we're going to be challenged on this project. It won't be any different than any other project we've done. But in the end, it'll be a better project. And we'll accommodate everybody right up until the very end. If there's an opportunity for us to accommodate anybody, we'll accommodate him. And if you could just see the communication between all parties here so that everybody was on the same page and so that everybody got to weigh in on something, whatever it was, a small little piece of this project or a very large piece, a tree, a guardrail, a light, whatever it was, everyone got a chance to weigh in, and again, for a better project. And these aren't easy, because people have been taking care of these properties for so long. And my grandfather had a phrase he used to say is, if you lend somebody's hammer and they have it too long, they think it's theirs, right? I'm guilty of that myself, trust me. And we all are. And so we're trying to, and in the end, I think as Dick said, we're gonna have a really good project, and we'll probably forget about some of the, a lot of these things. And if you think about it, as we talk about North Main Street, we ended up doing all of North Main Street over, getting sidewalks in, new road, lights. At the end of the day, it's had a 95% improvement. And cars used to back up into Fitchburg and back into Leominster every day of the week. And our police department and fire department were there all the time for accidents. It's improved. But again, it was the process. We went through it. At the end of the day, it's a better thing. So nobody should feel and leave here tonight thinking, you know, I didn't win. You did win because the process was fair and open for everyone. And it's a good thing. And we got to, this is democracy at its finest. People get to, you know, weigh in. So they have fielded, I don't know how many questions or phone calls, inquiries, and they've answered every single one of them. They've really done a good job. And I can say they've done their due diligence. Are we going to accommodate everybody and make everybody happy? Probably not. Do we wish we could? Just like you, sitting here tonight, we wish we could. But there are going to be some areas where we're not going to be able to accommodate them. But that's not going to stop us from trying right till the end. And again, I think we have a better project because of community involvement.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Thank you for accommodating us. It's
Not a
been 3
problem.
hours of your time, and you still got a full agenda
It's okay.
tonight.
No,
So
no, not a
we
problem at
appreciate
all.
it.
We appreciate everyone coming down tonight. Nikki, you want to, I'm going to go back to the audience one more time.
Mr. President, I didn't want to extend
go
your
ahead.
time
Okay, that's all right.
anymore,
That's
but
fine.
Natalie Higgins, State
your
Representative
time.
in Leominster, also a resident of 333 Elm Street. And I just wanted to share some news and support from the state level that we want to be a partner with you. We don't envy your job of trying to figure out how to make this work for Leominster and for Fitchburg, to my colleague who's here from Fitchburg. But this has a huge potential. And in the House and Senate budget that we passed finally today, albeit maybe 22 days late, we did include $75,000 that I worked on with the mayor and his team to work into phase 2 to really complete that project once it comes downtown in Leominster. It's not enough. We're going to try to add more in the next year's budget, but that shows that even at the state level, they're interested in these projects happening, particularly in gateway cities, to make our communities stronger and to interconnect them, to the point that Dick O'Brien made, that this has huge potential, and I know that it's going to be a hard transition for some community members, and I'm happy to help with trying to round up some more money at the state level to make it work for all of our community members. Thank you for
Thank you,
hearing me.
Representative. Thank you. Nikki, how about an end cap? Go ahead.
Oh, wow, a lot of pressure.
What would you like to say? You heard a lot tonight from
Yeah.
neighbors.
It's
They're all
honestly, it's something
legitimate.
that we hear all day, every day. I mean, John and I have been fielding as many calls as possible. Pam and Linda from the state, Arthur, Stan Tech, KP Law, everybody is just, it's an amazing team of people who really do care. I think there's this misunderstanding that, you know, people don't care. People aren't hearing what's being said, and we're really hearing what's being said. And if it can be addressed, like the mayor said, we'll address it. If we can't because the federal funding prohibits it, we can't. It's not because we're choosing not to, it's because we literally would be on the hook for repaying those funds, and I don't think anyone here wants to do that. And, you know, I think everyone's been responsive in a pretty quick manner. I try to get back to everybody same day if I can, but the same with the rest of the team. So obviously reach out to us if you have questions. But the things that we can't do, they're not a city choice. I think that's really the point that we have to make. And that, again, that this appropriation that we're requesting is to compensate people for the majority are temporary easements, 24 temporary easements, 6 permanent easements, 1 was donated, and it has nothing to do with the encroachments. Those have to be removed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Leominster wins. If they have to walk here, 2 touchdowns.
Thank you, folks. And all your guests from out of town tonight, thank you for coming.
Thank you for
The mayor's taking you guys to El Camino if you hustle up. Just have to have a meal under under $49.
It's so close. I mean, I've had the car broken into. You're from the state? The ending next to it, you know, further away. Snowball stone. Right.
And I think some of that will be cleared up by the nature of the project, right? Like we're gonna open it up and clear it up.
But the whole metal, big wires holding it in, you know?
Out of respect to the National Grid, who's probably in the audience, we're going to conduct the hearing right now, and then I'm going to give a little bit of time before we go back into session. Okay? So this hearing is before Public Service.
Nikki?
I'll meet you around.
Good evening. This is a public hearing on I-20, National Grid. Request to install one singular owned pole on Pleasant Street, beginning at a point approximately 45 feet northeast of the center line of the intersection of Cottage Street, and continuing approximately 25 feet in a northwest direction. Remove pole from private property behind fencing that is inaccessible, and move pole to sidewalk before bridge. This is also to correct for a leaning pole which brings conductors too close to a house, number 99-101 Pleasant.
Hi, my name's Javier Morales. I would like to request the approval of a grant of location, as you mentioned, for the pole mentioned at this location.
Nice job.
I did ride by there, and I'm assuming that the people that own the property don't have a problem taking that pole out of their yard.
Oh, that's good. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So there's people that, you have a pole on someone else's property?
Yeah, it's on private property, on
So
someone's
I'm
lawn.
sure they would be happy to see that removed.
Oh, of course, yeah.
All right. I don't have any more questions. At
Okay,
this
great.
point, I rode by there, and it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem to me.
All right, great, thanks.
You're not done yet, sir.
Right.
One second.
Is there anyone in the, well, let me go to the council first. Anybody have any questions in the council?
Javier, while you're here, you're
Yes.
going to be seeing management tomorrow?
Yes, I can, for whatever
Okay.
issue you have.
All right, I'm going to support the recommendation this evening is that Councilor Frieda makes from Public Service. But we're going to I'm going to lobby to slam the brakes on National Grid if we don't get a resolution to an issue that took place on Hall Street, because I appreciate the fact that you're here tonight on this particular pole.
Yes.
But as the Carter Building is being renovated right now, National Grid did not come down, install the pole on the Carter side of the street, replace the pole on the Hall Street side in front of 20 Hall Street, put a secure line onto someone's property, did not notify them of that, changed the cable line, did not get that resolved, cut a tree, the limbs down, left them in the street. And according to the city clerk, National Grid did not come down for permission for either one of those particular projects. So we have to have consistency. And, we appreciate the fact that you're going to be the messenger tomorrow for us.
Yeah, I'll bring that message back, and
Okay,
I'll have someone
Mark
call
Doan
you.
is a project manager. He has not gone back to me. I've spoken to him twice on it. And
What's the name?
Mark Dohan, Dohan, D-O-H-A-N, I believe, who's running the project. The people that I'm working with at 20 are very pleased with the work that's being done over at Carter, if you know the project.
I'm not familiar with it, I'm sorry.
But in the meantime, their land was disrupted. The pole was not replaced in the same hole. It was moved.
Okay.
And the secure line, again, is on their lawn. So if you could look into that and contact the city clerk's office, we'd really like to have some information on how that's going to get resolved.
All right, I'll do that
So
first thing.
Javier, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So is
Thank you, Counselor.
I'm sorry, was the petition approved for the pole location, or?
We're not yet.
Not yet, okay, that's fine. I'll have someone call you in the morning. I'll call the clerk.
Call the clerk's office.
Yeah,
That's fine.
all right, thanks, have a good night.
You don't want to stay any longer than you stayed already?
It wasn't bad, it was interesting.
They
Have a good-
sent you on a
Thanks
tough
for your
night.
patience.
No problem. Have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.
I'll go to the audience now. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in support or against this petition? Again, is there anyone who wishes to speak in support or against this petition?
Sorry, I thought we were done.
You are.
No, I'm going for audience
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just wait here, sorry.
support or opposition. For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in support or opposition? If not, any other councilors have any more questions? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Thank you. Javier, listen, if you need a note from the clerk saying you were here for almost 4 hours for overtime, we'll endorse it.
Yeah, no
Because
problem.
usually you guys are in and out of here in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good night. We're all set, Claire? Okay, we're going to go into session at 8:10. Give you a break, stretch, use the restroom. 8:05. the public forum first. The public forum is now open. This is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda this evening. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address, along with identifying the specific item or items, they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be made. Is anyone in the audience who would like to address the council? Second time? Third and final call? If not, the public forum is closed. Council is now in session. We'll begin with community. Are all the microphones on? If you can all double check, please. Yep. Good. Okay, thank you. We now begin with communications from the mayor.
CO8, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $75,000 to the Fire Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund, regarding purchase of new utility truck and Scott Air Packs.
Communication 8 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Yes, Mr. President, first time on the calendar, regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll now move on to matters before the City Council. We have nothing under emergency preamble, correct? Okay,
No.
very good. We'll begin with the financial report from Finance. Is the Chairman ready to report?
I actually did not receive a financial report.
That's fine. We did.
Oh,
we don't have
here it
today.
is, just
Yeah,
hot
we
off
do
the
have
press. All right, so, the beginning balance at the, I believe that's a typo, should be July 1st, 2019, and the stabilization account was $19,890,850. There's been no additions to that account since the beginning of the fiscal year. There's been a number of communications, on tonight's agenda, a total of $1,521,000 worth of communications from the mayor. If all of those are ultimately approved this evening, that would leave a balance in the stabilization account of $18,369,750.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll now move on to Finance. We'll begin with Communication 1. Is the Chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C1, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $11,000 to the Police Department expense account, same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Apparently, the Police Department uses or was using a case cracker system as part of their software and video recording for interviews of suspects or witnesses, etc. The system has, I guess, is on its last legs. The chief of police sent the mayor a letter on July 1st. I request $11,475.50 be appropriated from reserve in excess for the purchase of an iRecord interview room recorder. Our current case cracker system has reached the end of its life and must be replaced. We have actually lost video interviews recently. This new system is state-of-the-art and able to be accessed through our network. The new proposed system is a huge upgrade from the old one and actually more cost-effective than upgrading the case cracker. I have attached a quote if needed. It would be my position, Mr. President, to grant C1. I'd ask you to check with the one member of my committee that's in attendance tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield the floor to the clerk.
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
Yes, Mr. President, the unanimous recommendation of Finance is to grant C1.
Thank you. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 1. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 3, 6, 7 to nothing. Communication 1 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that sum of $11,000 be appropriated to the Police Department expense account, same be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, that recommendation read. Again, are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7 to nothing, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to Communication 2. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C2, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $65,000 to the Highway Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. This is in relation to the purchase of a dump truck for the DPW. Attached to the communication is a full quote for the truck and its fit-up. This is necessary to replace existing equipment at the DPW, ongoing effort to upgrade their equipment and remain capable of addressing all the city's needs. Mr. President, it'd be my position to grant C2. I'd ask you to check with my committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to the clerk.
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
Unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read to grant communication 2. Again, are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 7-0. Communication 2 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $65,000 be appropriated to the Highway Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Again, any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to Communication 3. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C3, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests that the attached loan order for $3 million be adopted for the police station planning and owner project manager. This is on for its first reading, right? No, just to be passed and then for its first reading. Mr. President, my recommendation would be to grant. This is to advance project costs for the owner project costs, namely for the project manager and architectural fees. We know this is a long time coming, and I'd like to advance this. I'd ask you to check with my other committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield the floor to the clerk.
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
The EMS recommendation of finance is to grant C3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant Communication 3. Are there any questions? Councilor Frida,
Yes,
go ahead.
Mr. President. I wholeheartedly support this. It has been a long time coming, and we're very fortunate that Daedalus Company is going to be the project manager. Councilor Bedanza and I work closely with him on the high school project. He's an incredible guy, and I think it's going to be it's a great company, and I think they'll do well for us. So I'm excited to get going on it, and hopefully it'll be close.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments? Councilor
Yeah,
Bonanza.
I echo the comments of the counselor at large. I did have, like her, the experience of working with that project manager, and they do a fine job, and I'm sure they're going to represent us well in the construction of the police station.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. Madam Clerk, go ahead. You can.
If you could just suggest the public hearing date for the August 12th, 2019 at 6:40, please.
All right, so we have to vote on that as well, right?
Yes, please.
Do it all at
right,
once.
So you want it, that's.
All at once.
All right, so the proposed hearing date is 8/12 at 6:40 PM.
Very good. Councilors heard the recommendation read. We're going to grant this tonight?
Yeah,
Was that the to grant? set the hearing?
we're going to grant the communication.
Okay, so again, to grant Communication 3 and set a hearing date of 8/12/2019 at 6:40 PM. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0. The communication's been granted with a hearing date set for 8/12/2019. Thank you. No adoption of an order on that, correct? Not at this point. Okay, good. All right, and we're going to move on to Communication 4. Bless you. Communication 4, is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C4, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $83,100 to the Highway Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. I think you may have heard earlier this evening that they kind of undershot with the first communication relative to the rail trail project. This is to supplement those 23 temporary construction easements as well as the 7 permanent takings that they're going to do. Based on the fact that where we are, we don't have the takings before us at this point, I'm going to recommend and ask you to check, Mr. President, with my committee member, that we give C4 further time
Further
tonight.
time, thank you. Madam Clerk?
I would be in agreement with
Very
that.
good, thank you. Please requalify.
The recommendation on C4 is further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read for further time on Communication 4. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Council Frida.
Yeah, just that I agree with further time. I think we heard a lot of concerns tonight. none of them seem to be too hard to address, hopefully. But at least this is giving an opportunity for them to all get back to the table.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of recommendation for further time on Communication 4, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 7-0, further time has been awarded to Communication 4. Thank you. We now move on to Communication 5. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C5, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $1,200,000 to the street resurfacing expense account. Same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is the mayor really making good on a long-standing promise to up the ante, so to speak, in addressing some of our paving needs in the city. As we all know, we get approximately $900,000 to $1 million a year in Chapter 90 funds. This money would be used to augment the paving projects that the city will do in the upcoming fiscal year. It would be my position, Mr. President, to grant C5. I'd ask you to check with my other committee member.
Thank you. I yield the floor to the clerk.
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
Unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you get that amendment in the language that was supposed to be in Ward 5?
We didn't see that, Mr. President.
You can see the ward councilors jumping out of their seats right now.
That's a supplemental bill that'll have to come down
It's a
later.
supplemental bill. Well, we'll take it if you guys don't need it, but anyway. Council, the recommendation read to grant Communication 5. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 7-0, the communication's been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order the sum of $1,200,000 be appropriated to the street resurfacing expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you. We now move on to Communication 6. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C6, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $77,000 to the school department expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is to replace some telephone equipment for the school department. Mr. President, it would be my position to grant C-6. Ask you to check with my committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Clerk?
I agree.
Thank you. Please qualify.
Unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C6.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant Communication 6. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? I want to make one comment, if I can, and maintain the seat. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. I know that the chairman of Finance Committee of School Committee is in the audience tonight. It's very, very important for the school committee and the school department to understand that this council has no authority to pass a petition on financial matters for the school department or any matters for that throughout the entire city without authorization from the mayor. The communications come down from the mayor, and we deal with them at that point. There was some confusion on a communication that was dropped off at the clerk's office. The clerk told the gentleman in the school department that was not the protocol. It still hasn't been taken care of. And in an email that we received in the office this past week, he thanked the clerk for qualification, which took place 3 weeks ago on the same item. So we'd love to be able to do that for you, but we can't. It has to go through the mayor's office. So just please bring that back to your board. I appreciate it. Because it's a bill that you got to pay, and it's probably going to be a problem now. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, please requalify.
Unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C6.
Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant Communication 6. Any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. In order that the sum of $77,000 be appropriated to the school department expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Again, any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to grant or adopt, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you. We now move on to the last communication, number 7. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C7, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $10,000 to the election and registration expense account. Same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. The mayor received a letter from our city clerk dated July 2nd. Dear Mayor Mazzarella, I respectfully request an additional appropriation of $10,000. This appropriation will allow the office to buy 45 rolling ballot totes for the upcoming elections. Currently, we have 30 rolling ballot totes that are sealed and stored in our election safe. These totes will not be accessible until August and September 2020 due to retention schedule required by Mass General laws. As such, we need to buy 3 sets of bags for the next 3 upcoming elections: local, preliminary, local, general, municipal, and presidential primary. The purchase of these bags will allow us to continually rotate the rolling ballot totes along with the retention schedule and provide us with bags we need for future elections. Attached, please find a quote from a vendor regarding the bags. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. I appreciate your time and consideration for this matter. Respectfully, Caitlin Huffman. So, as you can see, we need to have the capacity to collect the ballots and then, transport them for tabulation and then retain them in accordance with the statute. And we need additional equipment to do it properly. It'd be my position, Mr. President, to grant C7. I ask you to check with my other committee member.
Thank you. To the clerk?
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
Unanimous recommendation to Finance, Mr. President, is to grant C7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard the recommendation read to grant Communication 7. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. In order that the sum of $10,000 be appropriated to the election and registration expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 7-0, the order's been adopted. Mr. Chairman, thank you and your committee as well. We now move on to public service. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Frida, the chair, on 1-20. Are you ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. National Grid request to install one singular ohm pole on Pleasant Street, beginning at a point approximately 45 feet northeast of the center line of the intersection of Cottage Street and continuing approximately 25 feet in a northwest direction. Remove pole from private property behind fencing that is inaccessible and move pole to sidewalk before bridge. This is also to correct for a leaning pole which brings conductors too close to a house, number 99-101 Pleasant Street. I'll go to members of my committee. My recommendation would be to grant.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Oettinger.
Grant.
Thank you. Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
Unanimous decision to grant 1-20 from the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council's heard the recommendation read to grant petition 1-20. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Oettinger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Dabrowski.
Yes.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I shall record yea by a vote of 7-0. 1-20 has been granted. Thank you very much. We have nothing under new business tonight. Would you like to, go ahead. Councilor Frida, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think it's kind of important. I know it wasn't on the agenda, but I don't think it's an issue to discuss it. I just got a notice today about it. The FCC with the changes that they're looking for and the orders regarding cable and franchise fees.
Right.
It's a serious, serious issue, and it's gotten to the third step and pretty close to, to getting over the edge. It's going to really affect our ability, or the cable company's ability, to broadcast our meetings.
Right.
School committee, money that they get to do programming, it would be severely affected. I have a proposed letter, and I did ask through the MMA today whether it was appropriate or allowed to do one letter and have all the council sign it.
Right.
They said, yeah, there was not a problem.
Okay.
The bad part is that everything has to be in by Thursday.
Right.
So I can get the letter to the clerk tomorrow, and if councilors could get in and sign it.
Yep.
I mean, it's, I think we need to state our case as a city.
Okay, very good. If you can get a letter to the clerk, if you can scan it, get it out to the counselors, and if anybody can get in here in the next 24 hours to be able to sign on, thank you for bringing that up, appreciate it. Anything else, Counselor?
Nope. that should
Okay,
be-
good. Anything under old business? Counselor?
Under old business, I guess. So we did receive, I just wanted to, I guess through the chair to legal affairs, and then we're bouncing to
Well, we
petitioner.
can't get into any kind of a
No, I know. but
discussion
it's-
or anything on that. but
Exactly.
Why don't you
But
pass it by and see what it looks like?
It's the approval for 6419. We did that last meeting.
Yeah,
The parking spaces on Central Street. And we did, in fact, get a recommendation from the police department.
right.
So I just wanted it to be confirmed that this was in the spirit of the petitioner's original
It was.
request.
And I'm going to build on that just a little, if you
Yep.
allow me to.
Yep.
I had a meeting with the chief, and he was very apologetic to the whole thing, and it was a glitch. He took full responsibility for it, as I figured he would. It was just a communication glitch in the
Right.
department and a couple of vacations that were happening. And so, he's going to make a valiant effort to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Good.
So thank you very much for
Okay,
bringing
I
it
just
up.
wanted to point it out that that did in fact come
Okay,
through
perfect.
Yeah.
as requested.
Yep,
Thank you, I appreciate that. We're also now waiting for Copeland and Page to produce
Right.
the ordinance.
Right.
yeah, so that's the next.
Which should take 14 seconds, by the way.
It takes 14 seconds, but it's $750 probably
Yeah.
at the same time. Anything else on the old business? Anything happening, community calendar? I think the Beer Fest is next Saturday, downtown Leominster. I think you have to, on the 3rd, you have to go online in order to get a ticket, correct? It's usually sold out every year. Hopefully they'll have a nice day. Other than that, the Little Leagues are all wrapping up the summer, Jimmy
Yeah.
Fun Things, and
Fundraising.
Legion just finished up, and Lassie League just had a tournament this past weekend, so a lot of good things happening. So with that being said, have a great night, enjoy the cool weather, the meeting's over.